2, 1, go.
Hi, and welcome to the Technocrat Live. I'm your host, Matthew Newhall. With me tonight is Dr. James Brown.
Glad to meet you. Thanks very much for having me.
No problem. I'm so glad you came on. I really appreciate it. So, as usual, we're going to do the news to start, and then we'll get into your story. So, first of all, I just wanted to say thanks a lot for the new subscriptions. I appreciate it. That's what matters to me. You know, you can like stuff. That's fine. You can send a donation if you really wanted. That wouldn't hurt my feelings. But subscribes is where it's at. If you are a Mr. Robot fan, I know I have a 1 month rule. I'm planning on pegging the 1 month rule and going right up to the wall because I just binged the first season of Mr. Robot. So you better watch it. Now go catch up. You can watch it online. I just did it if you have cable. You just type your data in. You can watch it online. Yeah, because it's really good and it's really pertinent. It might be the best season. And I don't say that lightly. So, all right. And I have some kind of interesting news. I know I've mentioned sieve gene, my scientific theory on a few times on the show. I actually have a critic who actually had some verifiable criticisms of it. So I'm getting into details on that. I'll announce it on here when I have a retort. It's complicated, so it's going to take a little while to put together.
We got an anonymous question from a viewer.
Sure.
Someone asked, do you think it's a HIPAA violation to have a video camera, like a security camera, in a patient's hospital room?
So HIPAA is all about disclosure and data handling. So if the person signed a disclaimer and the data is handled in the same way that all the other patient data is, no. If it isn't handled the way the other patient data is, in other words, typically it has to be segmented, it needs a separate audit, someone needs to sign off on the audit to say it's okay, then yeah, it's probably a HIPAA violation. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, tell your boss, watch it. You know, he can't just run that to the security desk at the front. You know, it's got to be a server, a HIPAA compliant server. It's got to be a HIPAA compliant software they're using, and the data has to be firewalled and segmented as appropriate. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it answers it perfectly.
Okay, good. And by the way, if my answer is wrong, also please comment or question. Yeah, cool. So now let's get on to the Dystopia Report. The Dystopia Report, now featuring the weekly AWEE Award. So we have this bit on the news called the Dystopia Report. We'll get right into it. Oh man, I got the wrong link here. Well, that's okay. It doesn't matter. So apparently some Uber has been having a self-driving car program, and they've had their first fatality. So they murdered a pedestrian and, killed. I don't want to say murdered. Killed a pedestrian. And so there was that thing with AAA. So there was a thing in AAA with the news last week where AAA did a test and self-driving cars are not there. They're not ready. No. They're not even close. So apparently that this is backing that up. I don't know exactly what the details were, but apparently there's a lack of jaywalking algorithm. So it doesn't know how to deal with people who aren't following the rules. I guess it kills them. So we should rename Uber to Judge Dredd, I guess. You know, Judge, Jury, Executioner. For the Judge Dredd fans out there. Actually, there was a story that just cracked that Steve told me about before.
Yes.
So it was about something about the Ring. I haven't actually seen it, so I'm completely counting on Steve here, but it sounds important. So it sounds like there's a 0 day in Ring. Is that true?
I have an article up right now. It is from TechCrunch.com for those of you who want to look it up. Amazon Ring doorbell exposes home Wi-Fi passwords to hackers. Basically what the article is saying... a very brief summary.
That's even worse than I thought.
Is that when the Amazon Ring is being connected to your home network, people can like kind of not bypass, but they can kind of like get between the two and then kind of catch it as it's being connected.
Oh, they man in the middle it. That's what that's called.
Yeah, and then when it's getting connected, they get all the information being passed through for them typing in the information on the app and whatever. Mm-hmm. And now they have the information and they can use it to do bigger things. And a lot of people,
so they can
like keylogging their information and selling data and stuff like that.
Wow. So the way that this works, based on what you read, I'm assuming it's accurate and they're right. So what's happening is if people can read the Wi-Fi password and username, it probably is happening at the beginning of the connection. And so the good news is, if that's correct, they probably can't get it remotely across the internet. But the bad news is, if you have a stalker and they're a geek, now they just have to sit in a car outside your house and they can own your whole network.
Well, this goes a little deeper, actually.
Okay.
It also says that security flaws in this home hub ecosystem will allow hackers to unlock front doors if they have smart locks.
Oh yeah. Well, once you're in the network, you can do anything. Basically, most people's home networks are not that secure. So once you've logged into Wi-Fi, you can sniff, and there's going to be things. A lot of people's devices haven't been patched, so it's going to be pretty easy to get in there. So that's fairly huge news. If you have, and is it just the doorbells that have this, or is it everything?
Right now, the article specifies the Amazon Ring brand doorbells.
The Amazon Ring door. Okay, cool. So, patch it, people. Okay, so we got another one here for. Actually, I'm going to skip this one. Oh, no, it was this one I wanted to skip. Okay.
Also, I got another one if you need.
No, we got plenty, but go ahead.
Okay, sorry, last one. I hate interrupting because this just popped up. Video shows a driverless Tesla going down the wrong side of the road. I think you briefly covered this already.
Well, no, I don't think so.
But this is from Daily Mail. It shows that there is an alarming 3-minute video showing how a Tesla on autopilot is going down the wrong side of the road after being summoned by the smartphone app.
Get out of here. No, I haven't covered that one. That's also new. So that's totally separate than the AAA story the other day or the story I just told about Uber. That's crazy, man. They're like murder. It's like Terminator. It's like Skynet is loose on the streets and it's I am here to help. No, you're not. Stop helping. That's crazy, man. All right. Really, for me, it was just obvious when they started going really hard at self-driving cars that it really was just going to be a matter of like if they can't solve the simpler problem of trains, right? Because trains have less. It's an intersections problem. Mm-hmm. Self-driving cars are, I have 20 intersections. I have to navigate them successfully. Some of which are not expected, like a jaywalker. Right. But a train is a simpler thing because there's less intersections because it's mostly a straight rail. So if they don't have self-driving trains, why would anyone think self-driving cars were going to work out? I'm not saying they can't solve these problems. I'm just saying, why would we think they would be easy to solve?
One that kind of scares me is they're trying to push self-driving ships.
Really?
Big ships.
Not autopilot in the middle of the ocean, but in ports? Mm-hmm. In ports?
Well, it could be in the middle of the ocean, but basically...
Really?
Not too, maybe nobody on board or almost nobody.
Oh, completely autonomous?
Yeah.
So one of the things, fairly smart article we had on, well, go ahead, keep going.
I was going to say, it kind of reminds me of when steamships first came up and you had a lot of sailboats around and they had incidents off of Gloucester, off of the coast where the steamships would just run right over the sailboats without seeing them.
Wow.
And it almost seems like history repeating itself.
You could sink a ship just with the wake. So I'm sure that probably the sailboat drivers were like, "Oh, there's no wind," and then a steamship comes whipping by.
These are. Well, do you ever read the story or see the old movie Captain's Courageous?
No, I haven't.
That's actually part of that plot.
Oh, really? Okay.
Where a steamship came along and ran over the fishing schooner.
Ah, okay.
In the fog. But that really used to happen.
Wow.
And this makes me think that history is going to repeat itself. We're going to have the same thing with some of these ships that are not going to notice somebody in front of them and are not going to follow the rules of the road because they don't even see them.
Yeah, it's probably not even going to stop until somebody gets sued. most
Yeah.
likely. You know, I wonder how
it's a
stopped.
concern.
I'm
And
curious
these things
now.
can't stop because a large ship is going to
Right. It takes a while to.
yeah, maybe a mile or so before it can slow down, even if it puts it in reverse.
Right.
It doesn't-
Because its torque is relatively small
Oh,
compared to the.
the momentum. Yeah.
Yeah, the momentum. That would be. I'd be really. You know, I think when I go home
That's
tonight,
like self-driving cars.
I'm gonna look up what stopped that, why they stopped running over sailboats, and I wonder if it was a lawsuit or if it was something else, because that may be the answer for this too.
It was mainly radar, and made the sailboats had to start putting.
Well, radar
lights
wasn't until
on.
the 40s, so they're running
Yeah.
sailboats over to the 40s?
Probably. That's a good question. I don't know the answer, but it could be.
Yeah.
The
that's terrifying.
The film Captain Courageous, at least the original one, was actually, I think, done in the 30s and has some of the only real footage of Gloucester schooners back when they were actually fishing.
Wow, okay. Cool, man. Yeah, I'll look that up. I'm really curious about that now. Okay, so I'm skipping this one. I want to keep that one. So YouTube is finally being challenged on an overly broad definition of copyright infringement. So there's been a lot of argument over what fair use is, and there's been a lot of abuse. I mean, it's been abused since the late 90s when the recording industry and the movie industry started cracking down. You know, no fault of the people who signed contracts many years before that, who had, you know, no control over this juggernaut that they had unleashed to protect their copyright. But yeah, apparently a woman played an entire song from Disney in a video, but she's talking over, and she takes breaks and she's talking over it, and she's criticizing different parts of the song. So the whole thing is a commentary on the song. You can't listen to the song with her talking over it and enjoy it like you would normally enjoy the song. So, and she's taking them to court. She says, "No, that's bogus. You can't take me down for this. You know, this is this is a journalistic endeavor. Good luck, dudes." Yeah. So I think hopefully they're going to lose if she has enough money. So hopefully she has enough money. It has been the hottest October on Earth. Apparently it narrowly edged out 2015. It was really bizarrely warm here in New York, so of course that's crappy anecdotal data, but you know, confirmed locally. Yeah, not great. The good news is at least the oceans were cool. So apparently it was mostly the air. The oceans were cooler than normal, which I haven't actually looked at the sea anomaly data in a month and a half. I usually watch it this time of year for hurricanes, you know, for hurricane prediction. But it was on the cool side. There was a blob by us, a heat blob as usual. But that was a month and a half ago, so I don't know. Screen time. So, screen time brain function degradation. So apparently, there was a study that just came out. This is a study. You can look it up online. I don't recall the name of it, but it's all over the news, so you can probably find it. Where you know, the Silicon Valley people have been very against letting their kids have too much screen time, and apparently there's a study that says, okay, this is causing brain degradation. That's their conclusion. That they're actually, it's actually slowing their intelligence a little bit. But, and here's the big but, age and income were controls. So of course, age you would expect to be a control. It's for kids. You know, it has to be. But income is a control. To me, that's a big red flag, because if there was only like, it was double digits, like 50 kids or something they did this on. Probably means they were local. Probably means it's in the Bay Area that they did the study. So I'm not sure how accurate that's going to be. You know, because just, you know, the income formulas that they use to average out incomes may not work in the richest area in the country. So just, you know, they have the highest housing prices of any place. So I'm a little skeptical of that, but I brought it up because it does seem like it's plausible that screen time is damaging. I mean, I've let my kids have a lot of screen time on their devices, and I am worried about it. But on the other hand, they're geeks and they love to decode and do tech, so I'm loath to say no to them. So
What type of screen time is it?
They're talking about any screen time, phone. Yeah, but usually they're talking about
thinking passive versus active.
Yeah, I think they're talking about active, but I mean, some of it's passive anyway, right? Because some of that, for sure, any kid that's just let loose on a device that's on the internet is going to watch YouTube some of the time or videos some of the time. So, that's going to be part of it.
I'm just thinking about it from the perspective of stimulating or challenging the cells to grow, and because actually they found that some of the recent data that the brain can actually grow new cells and all, but it needs stimulation.
Right.
It needs
So maybe they're being understimulated.
Yeah.
It seems like it's weird though.
That's why I asked if passive versus active, because if it's active and they have to think about it and it's forcing them to do things, then it might not be, I don't know if they controlled for that. But most of these psychological studies, there's not a large enough.
Well, the problem is humans, right? How do you control humans, right?
Yeah.
Without identical twins.
You need bigger sample. Well, which, like this, the astronauts a couple of years ago, they had a twin that stayed on the ground, and
that's the ideal when you're experimenting on people. You want to have a second person, ideally that was raised in the same environment, same conditions, same life decisions, and
then you do something different to see if there's a difference. So that's ideal. But even then, to get around the ideal, you'd need a large.
I think I need to see a second study that came to the same conclusion. Hopefully,
third or fourth,
or maybe one with twins, or one with a few twins would even be better.
You ever hear of meta-analysis?
No, I haven't heard of it.
Okay, well that's a statistical approach when there's a lot of different studies and the studies start conflicting, and what some people I know have done is it's a Bayesian technique. And which some people don't like, but it's a Bayesian technique, and what they do is go through many studies to try to put the gestalt of all the studies together statistically.
Okay.
Because especially with something like this, the psychological.
So when you say Bayesian technique, you're talking about they're averaging them together. To explain that.
Okay. Where do I? I mean, I could take.
I vaguely know
3 hours on this, but it's.
Even if you can explain it to me, maybe I can explain it to them, or explain it back to myself.
I'll just try to see if I can simplify this a little bit. But basically, you start maybe with one study, and it has a certain result, and then you use like a Bayes formula, to then, now I'm going to add another one and increment that. Is it going to increment it one way or the other, then add another one, then another one, then another one.
Oh, so it's like a mean thing almost.
It's not really a mean, it's a little bit different, but it's you're putting, you're slowly building it up kind of statistically. You can think of it almost like experience. You keep running, except the computer is doing this algorithmically. But
I understand.
You're kind of putting the different results together a little at a time.
Let's talk about it so I took university physics. I understand percent errors. So let's put it in terms of percent errors. Let's say, so if every study is going to have some kind of error in it, right? Yeah. So if let's say you have a 3% and a 3% and a 3% and a 3%, and then you Bayesian them together, what's the resulting percent error?
Is 3% around what?
3%.
So presumably, they're.
Well, in the case of physics, it's almost always friction, right? But
this is. I don't know if this is used in physics too much, but it's used in trying to understand groups of psychological studies, or quite often ecological studies, or something like that, where it's not always as clear cut as the physics.
Right. No, I understand.
You get into some of the physics, and they'll talk about like some of the astronomy.
The Newtonian stuff is
5 sigma, 6 sigma. They want it within. very, very fine. Is it excluding it to the 6th standard deviation?
Right. So that would be a 0.00001%
something like that.
Yeah.
But you can't really do that.
Like 6 or 7 nines. It's very expensive, by the way.
Yes.
Well,
With physics, this is often what they'll do. The particle physics and things like that.
Right.
But you can't do that with the psychological studies because
you couldn't even come
have
close.
Like 20 people or 30 people.
Well, if it was 10,000 people, they're all running in different directions, like herding cats.
Well,
right.
Depending on how you make
Talking ethics, really. You can't force people to march in lockstep for too long.
True.
It gets weird.
True. And so you try and get around. You could try and get around this by having a bigger sample, but like 10,000 people or something. So those studies are a little more, maybe a lot more trustable, shall I say?
Yeah. But just because it's hard doesn't mean we shouldn't do science on people. And we shouldn't do fuzzy, science without great controls.
Yeah, we still have to, but like the study you brought up with the screen time and such. Okay, great. You had that study in one neighborhood. You do it in another neighborhood, another neighborhood. You're coming up with different results in them. How do you put all this together to come up with an answer? And that's what I was talking about. That's an approach for doing that.
Right.
Trying to
Okay.
Put them together
to approach
and treat
certainty.
them as if it's one big, or be able to make a big
it's
study
a union.
out of many studies.
It's a union of the studies.
Yeah, it's a way of putting it. So it's
a little
technically not correct, but yeah, that's the idea.
That's closer than what I was saying before.
Yes.
All right, so we're getting warmer.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, all right, I think I get the gist. I'm going to look it up, and if you're ever coming back on, I'll make sure to know exactly what it is, and that way we can go deeper on that. Sorry. So
we'll turn this into a statistics course.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I know a lot, but I don't. I know some about a lot. But sometimes it only goes a foot deep. It doesn't go a mile deep.
Too, so I have to check some of these things too.
Right. This one's kind of funny. So this is pretty simple. Sears the Sears catalog has gone full circle. Remember the Sears Roebuck catalog you get every Christmas? Guess who's sending paper catalogs? Only their slayer, Amazon.com, is now sending paper catalogs. So
that's not totally their slayer. There's
Sears has they might have killed themselves too. It was a murder-suicide.
Yeah. That was
I miss Sears. They had a lot of good stuff, and it was.
I just passed an empty Sears store coming here.
Yep.
So it's
I was. I took
frustrating.
I took advantage of a couple of the closings because I'm like, they have good quality stuff, right? This one's kind of interesting. So Florida has issued a DNA dragnet warrant. So apparently someone was. This is lots of Florida news. It's always Florida. So apparently they're going to search like 1 million records. So all I got to say about that is if you're voluntarily giving your genetic data to a big company like 23andMe, what are you doing, man? Come on, biometrics never go away, okay? Don't do it. Because now these guys got a warrant and now it's law. So now they can go and search, and if you happen to come up as a criminal that they're looking for, so I have no idea if it's going to hold up when it goes to higher courts, which I assume it will because it's new. But yeah, not good. And also, Florida has now gotten a murder warrant against a Echo Dot. An Amazon. Was it Echo or? I'm sorry. So they. No, it was. It's an Alexa. That's weird. Why did I write that? Anyway, so, oh, okay, here we go. Echo Dot, like other smart devices, are constantly listening for a wake word that signals when its user wants something. So essentially what's happening is it's recording everything that's happening, sending it back to Amazon, who then processes the text and then theoretically throws it away, but they say they can keep it, so who knows when they keep it and when they don't. Well, apparently Florida is banking on them having kept it because they just issued a warrant in the case of a murder so they could hear the audio of the murder. So, on the one hand, boo murderers. On the other hand, boo lack of privacy. And on the other hand, boo people who let that happen to them. So I don't know. It sucks. Don't do it. And don't have one of those, hey, wiretap, what do you think? Why? Why would you do this? I don't, be technocrats, people. Be technocrats with me. Shut it in. All right.
Achieve nirvana.
Achieve nirvana of total paranoia. Nirvana through paranoia, the Dystopia Report.
I was just talking about this the other day. The more people know about the computers and how this stuff works, the less they like having these things around.
Right. Well, it's a tool, right? I tend to have devices that are tools. It's more expensive to do this way. And this is one of the many ways that the wealthy have an advantage over the poor. That, when I have a thing that I want to do, I buy a computer to do that thing, and it does that thing, and that's all it does.
Right.
And I realize that I'm throwing computing power away. The computers are just sitting there idling most of the time. But it's safer that way. It really is, I still use light switches. So, I'm not shouting commands in my house. I know how that works. I could actually probably script it myself if I had to. But no, I'm not doing that. Oh, okay. So interesting thing. I don't know if you were interested in the Disney Plus thing. So Disney Plus has provided a HCL or hardware compatibility list of all the things that will work with Disney Plus and all the services that'll work with it. Well, probably one of the biggest services, if not the biggest service, is Roku. So Disney Plus is going live on the 12th, and they still don't have the Roku app up on their site. Or on the Roku, available on the Roku's listings, and I checked and I found an article that said, "Oh yeah, by the way, we're not going to release it until the day of." So
this also isn't on the Roku.
Yeah.
You know about that?
Oh yeah, that's in my list.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get to that. So so Disney Plus is waiting till the day of to see, their first shows start running to see if the damn thing works. So not great. I was kind of laughing about that when I found it by accident. I subscribed to Disney Plus. I've got kids. We like some Disney properties. I got a really good deal. It was cheap. Maybe it was too good a deal because apparently it's not going to run on our stuff. I'm like, I want to watch it on my TV. Come on, guys. So, yes, the next story is Netflix. And Netflix is abandoning older Rokus.
And Samsung
Smart TVs. So if it's going to be, the Rokus are going to be the C and D version, and the Samsung Smart TVs are all going to be discontinued. They're not going to release any new software for Netflix on Rokus so they're starting to abandon old versions of Netflix. They're expecting you to be. So this is one of those places where it really pays to be a technocrat. This is one of the places where it pays to watch the show, or at the very least, watch the Dystopia Report, right? Because, if you buy a smart TV, your entire TV could be orphaned. A perfectly functioning, 72-inch LCD that's screwed to your living room wall may just stop working one day, and there's nothing you can do about it. On the other hand, if you just buy a dumb TV and get a $30 device and plug it into it, if you ever have to change the device, you just replace it with another $30 device.
Plus it's a Roku.
Yeah. Yeah, well, if Disney Plus offers free hardware to everyone, I probably won't take it because I don't trust them. But because at least I can shut my Roku off. I don't know, whatever.
That's where the Jump Cut News and Technocrat News cross over because we spoke about that yesterday.
You did?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, cool. That's really funny. So yes, this is definitely. it's weird and creepy. And another thing brought to you by Digital Rights Management. So yeah, and it's really, so Disney Plus also is not going to make available Netflix, most of the TV stations, and Amazon. It's so weird. It's so different than the old days of Linux. Will let you run this stuff on Linux. They have streaming services, and you can watch movies on your Linux box. There's they use Widevine is the plugin that they use in the browser, and Widevine works just fine, and nobody else seems to have a problem with it. But Disney will not make Disney Plus available on Widevine. So I don't know. I mean, it feels political to me. It doesn't feel like it's a technological decision. I don't know what they're thinking, but screw that open source stuff. Disney's had a bad week.
I'm wondering if they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Yeah, they probably are, because a lot of those devices run Linux underneath. So that's why I'm really worried about this Roku app not working.
It's been kind of the history of technology that when someone tries to tighten it up and make a monopoly, they basically get pushed out of the market.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Netflix is awesome. It's not Disney.
With really old examples, but that tends to be a pattern.
Like just perusing Netflix. I mean, there are a dozen shows on Netflix that I enjoy and I want to watch. Usually, I just sit there and binge watch it like an idiot, and then when it's over,
screen time.
It's a full day of screen time. I'm completely irradiated and sleep deprived by the end of it. But I'm like, that was a great show, and then I don't watch it again for a month, and then something else comes out and I binge it again, But they have some good content. I don't know. I'm doing Disney for my kids. I'm not really doing it for me. The kids are going to grow out of it. So what are they going to do then? Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be kids, but it seems like they're limiting themselves to a smaller market.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, Daredevil's probably going to go on all the Netflix Marvel shows.
Yep. Okay, well, that's good.
That's kind of the whole draw of Disney Plus.
Right. Well, there's the Mandalorian, and it's having access to. I haven't seen a lot of the. I've seen pretty much all the Pixar movies, but I haven't seen some of the Disney movies. The kids haven't seen some of them, so especially the animated ones now that they're redoing everything live action.
I wonder who the competitors are that might take advantage of that.
Oh well, I mean.
Yeah. So that's what comes to my mind. If you're going to lock yourself down that much, someone's going to say, "Ooh, we have an opportunity."
Yep.
HBO, Warner Brothers, Netflix, Hulu.
Yeah.
Well, so honestly, I think Hollywood's just dying, man. I mean, they're just. They've been dying since the internet came along, but I mean, who was it? There was a big director that just came out today, and said, and had to make a clarification because he basically said, "Yeah, comic book movies aren't really cinema,"
I think that was Scorsese.
Scorsese, yeah, Martin Scorsese said that. So I mean, that's how they really feel. That's what they really think. They only did comic book movies because they had to. This is not their triumphant moment of glory. This is their death knell. That's all they got left in the bank is Marvel. So once Marvel peters out, they're done. So sorry. I mean, it's actually good. Entertainment won't go away, but I think what's going to happen is it's become more localized. We're going to see a New York entertainment scene like we haven't seen before, at least not since the 10s. Well, we're the logical choice. We're the biggest city, so the biggest pool of possible actors and actresses and people to work.
It's pretty active.
Yeah.
The office where I work, we've been used as a set twice now.
Really? Twice?
Yes.
Awesome.
We're trying to work, and meanwhile they're in the hall going, cutting!
Yeah.
Okay, can we come out and get to the printer now? Literally.
Could you please shut the copying machine off? It's we can hear it on the boom. Yeah. My church actually got it was in a movie, and they got some money from that.
Yep.
And at Little Neck, man, it seems like every few months there's a cemetery they just love, and or a church and a cemetery, because it's a little church that's on a hill and it's in the center of a big cemetery, the Zion Church, and it's not my church, so whatever, guys.
It's kind of a stereotypic. It's out in the woods.
Yes, it's an idyllic church in the middle of the city, so it's convenient.
They don't have to go all the way 4 states away to get to it.
It is pretty much an idyllic country church, in a way, because I've been in. The kids had a party, and I got to go in there and check it out. It's not my religion, I think they're Episcopalians, but
just the type of set they are looking for.
Exactly what they're looking for. So once every few months, that one of the lanes will vanish on Northern Boulevard, and they'll take it over. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more of that. There's going to be a lot more low budget versions of that. Because I mean. Normal movies, I mean, you could make it with a GoPro. You really could.
Yep.
I mean, it would take.
Music video on my phone.
He did a music video on his phone.
Yeah.
I did a cartoon sitting at my desk at home. There's a cartoon as an intro for the show. What is a 30-second, what is a Technocrat cartoon? There's going to be more. I'm going to do an intro for the show. I'm going to do an intermission. So, I mean, we really don't. It doesn't need to be a union operation anymore, so to speak.
Yep.
I'm not picking on unions. I like unions, but they just everything's too expensive.
But it's basically these tools, and we were talking about tools before, are more available to everybody.
Right. So really, it's gonna. I love the fact that creativity is becoming front and center. I mean, every year you just hear about just piles of phenomenal independent films going to the film festivals, and I don't think that was happening before. I think that's new. So I think that's just going to expand. Eventually, there'll just be more film festivals. I laugh whenever they try to exclude someone in the film festivals. I'm like, really? Do you know what's going on out there, guys? Come on. So that was a cool segue. I wasn't expecting to go there. So so here's another thing. This is actually kind of I'm probably going to make an enemy with this, but I don't even care. There is a Nazi group that has a website up called Iron March. Well, I don't know if it's up anymore. Antifa broke into it. So, and I love this story. Because it really demonstrates how powerful it makes it is to be a technocrat. Because I understand the technicals of what happened here, and what the details are. It's pretty simple. So there's nothing about this in the news. So this is me reporting this now. So Antifa broke into this Iron March website. So according to the Southern Poverty Law Center, now I don't always like them. I don't always think they're fair. In fact, they've actually got recently successfully sued for defamation. But I'm using them as the most anti-Nazi source I can use because I'm being generous with numbers here. So they said that this is one of the biggest Nazi websites. So I went and looked at the database. Antifa posted the database with the intention of people with doxing them or attacking them or whatever they're going to do, or try to, if there's any politicians in there, get them. Good. I mean, whatever. I'm not involved in that. But I went and looked at the SQL database, and sure enough, in there are only how many members do you think there are in this group? One of the largest Nazi groups in the country.
135.
I gave you the tell with that one word. I slipped.
Am I lowballing?
Yeah, lowballing. 12,008.
12,008.
Sorry, 1,208. Sorry, 1,208. So it's 1,200
off a decimal point.
So one of the biggest Nazi groups in the country. There's only 1,208 people. So I'm like, all right. So let me see how many groups. SPLC. Let's keep using them because they've done a lot of research on this. How many groups do they think there are? So they think there's about 1,100 groups. So if this is one of the biggest, let's use that number, that 1,208 number. So it turns out there's 1.3 million Nazis in the country, according to the SPLC, which is kind of scary, bigger than I would like, but not as scary as I thought it would be. So the reason, again, like I said, this is Nazis interest people. So this is this is a really interesting story because it shows how powerful it is. If you're a technical person and you could look at an SQL file. Now they put CSVs up too, so you could have done it that way. But if you're a technical person, you can look at an SQL file. You know what's going on. And people who aren't technocrats have a real disadvantage. And I really one of the things I'm hoping to do with the show is to equalize that, because I think it's really important for democracy for people to know enough to govern. And if you have facts like that out there, if you can look at these facts and take this fact and that fact and come up with something new, do it, people. Just learn some, learn. SQL is a database type. So, I don't want to be too. No, it's wonderful to be a technocrat. But SQL is a database type, and you can either load up a database in a database client on a separate machine. You should probably put it in a sandbox in case there's something naughty going on there, or you can use one of many SQL database readers. Or in the case of where they also, if you wanted, in this case, the people who did the hack wanted to make it easy, so they put CSVs up, so you could just open that up with a spreadsheet. But really you're at a disadvantage if you don't have the ability to open up a database and find out what the real numbers are. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. 1.3 million Nazis, that's the answer. So, quote from Linus Torvalds. I don't know coding at all anymore. Most of the code I write is in my emails. So somebody sends me a patch and I reply with pseudocode. So apparently, one of my main technocrats, Linus Torvald, the guy who wrote Linux and wrote Git. So if you don't know that, that's the guy who wrote Git. Is actually gotten to the point where he's so high level that he can't even touch the code anymore. Most of the time he's just replying to emails with pseudocode and saying, that's just broken. So, on the other hand, that's the negative view. The positive view is, if you're doing that already and you're a manager, Linus Torvalds is doing that too, so you can kind of justify it, right? You don't necessarily need to dig into the nitty-gritty of the code to show that you're the person who's the right person to be doing that job. That it's okay to express things in pseudocode. What do you think? Any opinions on this, or is this inevitable? Is projects scale up that at some point you're going to be working in pseudocode and not looking at the detailed numbers?
Or end up getting so into the management end that you kind of forget the details a bit.
Right. I think that's what he's saying. I don't think he's saying he can't code. It's Linus. Come on. But it's
more,
everybody knows he can. Obviously, he can.
He doesn't have time for it. And
right. He can't manage the project
rusty,
and
maybe.
actually write the code at the same time.
Yeah. You have to. At some point, you have to delegate.
At some point, Linus doesn't scale.
Yeah. Nobody does.
Nobody. So if Linus doesn't scale, you don't scale either. Sorry, man. Because he's always been exceptional at this kind of thing. He had just the right set of technical chops and social skills where he just honed in on. He was able to just drive a truck right up. I don't know. Well, right up a 2x4 to the back of across a long rickety bridge on a pair of 2x4s. So. I would think that's probably an accurate description of making geeks get along.
It's a slightly different view, but yeah.
Yeah. So, good.
Taking over someone else's chat room.
Right. Oh, what do you mean?
When he first started.
Oh, when he first started? What happened with that? I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, no. Okay, well, I can't think. I'm trying to remember the name.
Oh, okay.
But there was a book.
Watch your hand by your beard. So sometimes when you put your hand over here,
the mic. Sorry about that.
Pop the mic. No worries.
Was that the Dragon book? No, it was a different book. There was a book about operating systems, and I think the people who wrote it. I'm a little rusty on this. They had Minix.
Okay.
That was their.
Minix was the thing that Linus replaced.
Well, not really so much replaced.
Well,
that
whatever.
was that went with this book.
Oh,
and the idea is that you would learn how an operating system works by taking it apart and putting it in and trying different schedulers and
Minix was
and manipulating how that operating system worked.
Right. Did you have Minix?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay, cool.
Well,
Minix was before me. You know.
I was teaching in computer science department at the time, and one of the other.
You taught computer science?
Yeah.
Get the out of here.
I'm not.
I didn't know that.
I've done a few different.
All right,
things.
dude, fist bump, man. That's cool.
And environmental science and a couple other things, but. One of the other professors had an operating system course that I was helping with, and this is the book she was using, and this is what she had her students doing, and kind of tearing Minix apart and all. But how Linux got started was that he was asking people on the forum that went with the book okay, how do you do this? How do you do that? And developed a lot of interest there. Eventually, they had to kick him off the forum because it was taking up most of his time.
Okay, I got
That's when he kind of went off on his own. This is when he was still in college.
See, the story I had was from his roommate, from Lars, and it was he actually gave it as a talk in one of the expos, and he was saying that the real reason he went with Linux was he did mention he tried Minix, but the real reason is then he went to Solaris, but Solaris was too expensive.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So they're both true. Okay.
Yeah, easily, but it was
yeah.
the forum where people were asking questions about Minix, where he started asking the detailed questions. And this is what the book was written for, was to learn operating systems and such. And so he was asking suggestions and learning on that forum, and writing his own version is a completely separate version.
Right.
And after a while, that was just taking up too much of the forum. Now, okay, go create your own forum. Go create your own forum.
He took over. I love it.
Yeah. So that.
Right. Well, that's very organic. I like organic stories.
So
you know it's real if it's organic, right? Cool, man. Actually, some good news. So we know each other through Linux, but Linux. Microsoft used to be a dirty word. They have been doing so much good stuff lately. I mean, not just like philanthropy. I'm talking about the company itself actually being a good citizen in the corporate universe. So they're actually talking about contributing to OpenJDK now. So Sun kind of shut one door and Microsoft's opening another. So Oracle shut one door and Microsoft's opening another. So wow, I never thought I'd see that. But of course, there's some people are pushing back and saying, oh, how do we know we can trust you? But what people who are not into gaming might not realize is, I mean, of course Java is a huge space, right? A lot of people know how to program in Java, a lot of people write in Java, but also they just bought Minecraft like a few years ago, and they've been an excellent steward. They've been taking good care of it. The improvements of Minecraft have made it dangerously more fun, and they've been taking care of it, and
Bees.
they got the bees are not out yet, I don't think. Bees, yeah, that's in the beta, but yeah, Minecraft is doing really well, and of course it depends on Java. It's a Java program, so they're kind of up a creek if they can't keep Java running. So it makes sense just from that. It was $2.4 billion they bought Minecraft for. Yeah. So
they bought it for $30.
Yeah. Well. He got me.
We'll go there.
I'm like, what? $30? Actually, I have a Minecraft account that is so old. I have a username, not an email. So, yeah. I've corrupted the young with. I told them I've sung the stories of Minecraft far and wide. Interesting news in New York. So the dystopia report gets a little better as we get towards the end. It's more good news. Not entirely. The Owie Award is the finale.
I guess you run out of time before it becomes the utopia.
By this point, we're either extinct or we survived it, right? New York City has voted for ranked choice voting. So for people who know me, I am a huge approval voting advocate. Actually, I've done everything I can to promote it. So approval voting is great. I like approval voting a little bit better because I think it's simpler. But the ranked choice voting and approval voting are both two voting methods that that tackle the spoiler effect. In my opinion, this one tackles it a little worse, but okay, that's the last negative thing I'll say about it. It's a very good thing.
At least it tackles it.
At least it tackles it. At least it's not ignoring it, right?
Right.
So for people who don't know what the spoiler effect is, when the spoiler effect is actually a special case of gerrymandering, really. So what ends up happening is that if you have multiple candidates running for a particular office, they will try to poach each other's voters in a very negative fashion. And so what ends up happening is people don't vote for the candidate they want, they just vote for the candidate that they think will beat the person they least want. And that's a very negative. It's a very negative way of looking at governance of your society, and it also it tends to emphasize mudslinging contests in politics. So this is a huge news for civics, and I'm really happy about it. And assuming that the implementation isn't flawed somehow, it only can be good news. So, and this includes the mayoral race and a bunch of other offices on the way down for New York City, just New York City. But as far as I know, only 2 states have done this at the state level, and that's North Carolina and Maine. So this is still the biggest city in the country is a pretty big deal. So, yay! All right. Was that a good explanation of the spoiler effect? Was that fair enough?
I'll live with it.
He'll live with it. Like this. If I blow it,
Or
that's what you're here for.
Yeah.
See, I juggle, and then you try to pull the balls out of the air as I'm juggling, and be like,
I think I've done that once or twice so far tonight.
yeah, that's okay, that's good. So, but I'm encouraging you to do it more.
and
if I'm wrong, I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to keep it.
Well,
the last thing I want to do is keep being out here making a fool of myself, saying the wrong. Same thing is not true.
Yeah, to me, the spoiler effect, and I don't know if it's right, but that's when you have like a third, fourth candidates that are drawing people away from
Right.
Someone who might be a main contender.
Right. Well, but what ends up happening is that people are forced. Yeah. It's part of the. We're describing the 2 sides of the same elephant. So it's the same logic and decision making, but you're looking at it from the well, here's the negative outcome, and I'm looking at it from the positive outcome, or vice versa. You're looking at the
well, we're both looking at the effect that these other voting methods that have so far but just been theoretical constructs,
right,
are trying to address.
Right. Yeah, and so what. The funny thing is, it's a little harder to prove the case that it's a specialized spoiler effect voting. When you only have tends to push you into 2 parties, which is a negative thing, I think, because priorities change. I mean, look how fast technology is changing, and I mean, you want to reward someone who understands it because that's the right thing to do for democracy. And if people don't understand it, well, a small, leaner organization's going to understand it faster. Just the same way that universities can't always ramp up for practical applied technology courses, but sometimes the technologies come and go in less than 4 years. How are you supposed to write a 4-year degree in less time than the technology is around? So this affects politics too. And I'm not saying a 4-year turnover in a political party is a good thing, but maybe less than a few hundred years would be good. At least as far as ideologies and philosophies and understanding of the world. Because otherwise, what good is science, right? If we can't evolve our viewpoints on how the world works. So there's kind of a gerrymandering aspect to it too, where I'm just not prepared to talk about it. But take my word for it. Go look it up on the internet. You have the interwebs. Use them wisely. All right. And now, finally, the OWI Award. So, this is a new award. We just started giving it this show, so you were here for the inaugural OWI Award, but I'm going to give one every single week because some of these stories are real doozies, and this one takes the cake. This time it's the New York City, or the New York State MTA. That gets the OWI Award, and the OWI stands for Own Worst Enemy. So so it turns out that somebody called into the MTA to say that there was a suspicious package. The police showed up on the scene, and sure enough, they found a large brown package with some labels on it. It was a tall, skinny package sitting on the platform, and they vigorously ripped open the packaging to discover that it was a terminal that was just installed by the MTA so people could call in suspicious packages. Apparently, it was pretty suspicious. So they win the OWI Award this week. That inspired me to create the OWI Award. So maybe next time take the wrapper off when you install it, guys. So that's the Dystopia Report. James Brown, thanks so much for being on.
My pleasure.
You're a doctor now.
PhD at least, yeah.
Yeah, you're a PhD.
Not
doctor.
an MD.
Yeah, not an MD, right. What's your doctorate in? It's
ecology and evolution.
Right. I mean, you've always been super knowledgeable both about the theoretical and the real. So I always love talking to you.
A lot of that's involved in this. Yeah.
I really wanted to get you on here and share that with everybody because
the computer science degree was on the way to that.
Right. I knew you had a computer science degree, but I didn't know you taught computer science.
Yeah, I did for a while. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Did you enjoy it? I mean,
yeah.
But you enjoyed.
It kind of went downhill after the internet bubble burst. But
oh, you got caught in the .com downside, the .bomb thing.
Downside of that, yeah.
Yeah, me too. Everyone did. You know, I think that's been the only thing in that space like that. There was a little bit of a downslope in 2008 when the recession started. That was really bad though. That was. We were inches from oblivion. Most people don't know that. You got to study economics to know that. But yeah, it was pretty. At one point in New York,
I was definitely following it.
Yeah, in New York City, though. So I would walk past a block I didn't even know was designated for this. Of course, it probably was never until they needed it. They would the city would dump impounded cars, for back loans. And, so one day I'm walking to work and I just see like one car with a sticker on the window. And, 4 days later I walk by and there's 10 cars with stickers on the window. And the next day I walk by and the entire street is filled with cars with stickers on the window. And I'm like, this is not good. and then a few weeks later I'm riding by the employment office and there's, a line of 10 people out of it. And then there's a line of 40 people. And then like a month later there's a line around the block. And then they changed, that was when New York City changed to a call-in system. Because I think people were starting to take pictures of the people lining up around the block and, yeah, and then and they started they changed the rules for loans and they started and they managed to avoid it. Right? There was I'm not thrilled with how they did it. I don't really want them to bail out the banks.
Yeah, there was a few of those.
I'm kind of on board with the whole Occupy Wall Street on that. I get it. It really. You don't want to reward a drunk driver with a bigger car, is my analogy for it.
With a bar and installed.
Yeah, with a bar.
Might not be a good idea.
With a dispenser for brown paper bags so the cops don't see what you're holding while you're driving in your other hand. Yeah.
Just dark windows.
Yeah, but it was close. It was really close. It was pretty close to oblivion.
Yeah, was it the long-term capital management implosion, that whole thing?
Yep.
I guess we could segue back to statistics there.
Sure.
Even though they had a Nobel Prize winner, I think what was it, Scholes was involved in that. I think it was. And it was the Black-Scholes equation or system was supposed to give you the risk management for dealing with derivatives. Except it used the normal distribution.
Hold on one second. So if you don't know what derivatives are, we have a mixed audience. So so derivatives are this point I can answer. So derivatives are essentially, well, they are a lot of things, but they started as an insurance policy for commodities traders. That was really their original purpose. So that people could bet against their own commodities, because commodities, and there was actually a legit justification for this, because commodities have a down cycle, a natural down cycle, and a boom and bust cycle, where people will overmine, overproduce, overbreed. In reaction to market dips.
Yeah, and a lot of it was also farmers.
And also just random events like weather events and stuff.
Like farmers, in this case it was futures, which is one of the derivatives. Farmers, they have to buy seed, they have to buy fertilizer now, but they're not going to have a crop to sell until later. so they can sell futures and get some money so they can grow the crops.
Right.
And then they might be selling under market rather than making a big profit later, but
Right.
at least they were able to grow the crops.
Right.
So it was to smooth over some of these ups and downs.
Well,
at least that's with that subsect.
That was the pitch anyway.
Early on. Well, early on that was the function, but it went into a lot of other things after that, and really some of them were
bets on bets.
Yeah, some of them were. I'm trying to word this nicely. Maybe not exactly honest.
Right.
Like how Orange County, California got clobbered.
No, I didn't know about that. Tell me about that.
Oh, they were basically sold something that wasn't. Again, I'm a little rusty on this. This was a few years ago, but they were sold some derivatives that they probably shouldn't have been buying. The risk was way too high.
The risk was mispriced. The rating was wrong.
That's where a lot of the.
So right at the peak of the crisis, the real people under the microscope were the ratings agencies, because they were marking the risk wrong.
Right.
And in the mortgages specifically, but also other fields too.
Things. And this is what I was talking about with the original Black-Scholes equation. Way of looking at it is that these rare events, these really risky events, are more common. They're not really a normal distribution. So you have the fat tails problem.
Right.
Where
you're talking Talib now.
Yeah, it's more what the statistician would call platykurtotic. It's not really normal. It's a little bit flattened in the middle. The average thing doesn't happen quite as much as you'd expect. But the kind of the disasters, the risks, good or bad,
are off the chart.
Happen more often than you expect, and they didn't plan for that.
Right.
That wasn't priced in. So when something bad did happen,
right.
It just
so of course Talib has continued with this work, and what he's with his he's the guy who's known for Black Swan, and he was the one who predicted the crisis within months, weeks maybe even, I'm not sure, and actually he's moved on since then. A lot of it is the fact that when you make bets and you don't have a personal involvement in the risk, you can't assess it. That's essentially his takeaway. There's a lot of math that honestly makes my head, my head spin. I mean, he posts stuff on Twitter. I'm like, I don't even know how to do that font. I mean, I realize it's probably LaTeX, but I'm like, I don't even, how do you get that there? But I think it's just images, right? He's probably in LaTeX doing integration stuff. But I don't even know where some of it comes from. Got to dig into it more, but that seems to be his takeaway. That this when you have too much of a disconnect between risk and the risk taker, they just can't
derivatives on top of
it.
derivatives and derivatives of the derivatives.
Right.
So it became almost a con game.
Right.
A lot of it.
Honestly, even if I could do the math, I wouldn't do it on the show, because people would just be like, "What?" I mean, we do have whiteboards, right? But I mean, oh no, we're not doing that. Please don't hit me with math, man. Look it up. Okay, so. So one of the reasons I thought to invite you on the show is because I did the ride that I used to commute 15 years ago, and we would wave at each other every day. So you ride a motorcycle. I don't know if do you still ride, or?
Right now, they're sitting there waiting for me to revive them.
Oh, okay.
I've been running around with too many things to fit on a motorcycle.
So he lived out east, and he would be commuting he'd be commuting west, and I lived west, and I'd be commuting east, and traffic's a nightmare in Long Island, so we'd be on Ocean Parkway, and every day we'd wave at each other, and he was going like this, and I'd always go like this, and every day at the same time, hey Ralph, hey Fred,
Right.
So I did that ride as part of a charity ride,
Oh.
It was
yeah, recently.
yeah. That was and I was just like, oh, I gotta. I totally haven't called Jim. Why haven't I called Jim for the show?
I saw all the motorcycles going over.
I was one of them. I was there,
Yeah.
so it was lots of fun. But I'm like, yeah, I totally. So I saw that crazy windmill, and I was just like, I wonder how the windmills are doing. So you guys got a windmill?
Yep. It's not my particular project. One of the other people in the
No, I thought your name was on the deed. Yeah.
No.
That'd be cool, though, right?
A couple of times.
I put one of those in my backyard. My neighbors will love me.
To help figure out the computer connections, but I'm not the point person on that. But I'm gonna at least try to be a little bit conversant on it. It's a 100K. It's one of the bigger ones one of the bigger wind turbines on Long Island at the moment. Mm-hmm. It's not as big as the ones that they have off Block Island. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know about those.
No, I don't know about those.
They have a couple of really large ones off Black Island.
How much larger? I mean, that thing's humongous.
Oh, a lot larger.
Okay.
These are the ones that are out in the ocean.
Do you want to go larger because of phallic kind of things, or why do you want to go bigger?
More electricity.
More electricity?
More efficiency.
Is it cheaper to just go larger scale and then rather than have a bunch of little ones? That's what I mean. I'm joking. I don't know if you knew I was joking.
and here I'm trying to figure that out.
It's like, wait, I don't know. Is it a fallacy? I don't know. No, of course it's not. Is it? What's the reasoning behind having a really large one versus a series of smaller ones?
They actually had, I think, was it 3 large ones, 4 large ones? I forget exactly how.
Right.
I was up there a couple of years ago for a conference when they first had them running.
Right.
And certainly the people there were very proud to show it off.
Right, of course.
Look at our windmills. They had pictures of them.
Well, how many kilowatts were the big ones?
I don't know, but it's.
How many kilowatts is yours?
100.
100 kilowatts.
Yeah.
Okay.
So these.
That's a lot of power. So just to put it in perspective,
these would be a lot larger than that.
Of course, you never know for spikes, but for just general usage, 20 kilowatts will do about a block. So 100 kilowatts is about five city blocks worth of houses.
Yeah. So it certainly powers our office and a lot of the utilities, and we get to sell it back.
You don't need all that energy, do you?
No.
Okay, cool. So you sell it back, huh?
Yeah. Well, my department does, but yeah.
Awesome. No, that's great.
So it helps keep us afloat.
Right. Yeah, I've actually been encouraging. I do a few charity things, and
we also have a lot of solar panels too.
Oh, solar too. I'm encouraging my church to do solar. That's what I was.
So we have a lot of solar.
We're not there yet, but we're getting there.
And we have one of the few stations that cracks water to create hydrogen.
You crack water?
Yeah.
What are you on Mars?
We have lots of little,
That was one of the Mars trials where they actually have a water cracker. So in case you don't know what we're talking about, hydrogen is available. The cheapest, most abundant source of hydrogen is either pulling it from the atmosphere or cracking it out of water.
But you can't really pull it from the atmosphere.
You can't? Oh, because it reacts with everything, of course.
Well, it reacts with oxygen.
Right, yeah.
It creates water.
Right. So
you don't actually, if you had free hydrogen in the air,
it would explode.
It would just leave the planet.
It would leave the planet? Oh, I didn't know.
It's so light that it would just float to the top.
I thought it would just be at the top of the atmosphere. I didn't.
Well, keep going.
Oh, it would keep going.
And that's what happens with helium.
Really?
Yeah, it just disappears out into space.
So helium isn't renewable, huh?
Nope.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously what happens to hydrogen, it happens with lighter helium, so.
Hydrogen's more renewable because it will react with the oxygen.
Right, it'll just grab something on the way up and then,
And so it'll rain again.
So eventually we could run out of helium because of kids' parties.
Oh, yeah.
What? That's why I love talking to you. I had no idea that was a thing.
No, it is.
We could really run out of helium, huh?
We could, which would be a problem because it's also used in MRIs and it's used for medical purposes.
Right. Well, I mean, the lightest gas is going to be useful for something.
Well, in this case, it's useful because you can get some of the colder temperatures.
Right.
liquid helium. If you're going to use that as a refrigerant, it's going to be even colder than liquid nitrogen. You're getting close to absolute zero at that point. And for some of the magnets to get
to be conductive enough to work, right?
Exactly, superconductivity, so that you can do MRIs and such. You need.
Man, the MRIs changed the world, man.
You don't do that with liquid nitrogen. You do that with helium.
I didn't know that. Wow.
So it's got some real important uses. So
this is going to become an exercise in filling a bucket with all the things that Matt does not know. No, that's amazing. I totally hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
So you guys are cracking water to get the hydrogen out to fuel hydrogen cars. How many hydrogen cars do you have?
Right now, I don't know if we have any. We did have some on loan. For testing purposes,
right?
Like we were beta testers and such.
Right.
So for a while I think we have a bus that works, I think, on natural gas, or maybe it works on a mix of hydrogen gas and such.
So it's like
I'm not the point person.
So it's like an EV1 or something where they just give it to you, see how it goes, and then take it back.
Well, that's what we had. It would be nice to get one again. If someone out there has a lot of money and they want to donate a couple, we'll be glad to take them.
Right, to test them. We'll test them for you. We'll collect good data for you.
But we did have some for testing and such.
Right. Well, they'll certainly get enough on the durability of the parts with all the salt water there, man. That stuff destroyed my bike when I lived on there. I lived on the Barrier Island.
I grew up down there. Yes.
Yeah. So when you're that close to the ocean, you'll be waxing everything bi-weekly at worst.
Yeah.
If you don't want it to get destroyed. So that's cool. I was kind of curious what the state of windmills was. Is there any hope of getting more windmills on Long Island? Because I'm super interested in renewable energy. I love EVs. I love alternative sources of electricity.
One of the things that's a bit of a controversy now. Well, the first proposal for a windmill, wind turbine farm off of the coast, that was killed a number of years ago. I won't go into the
people can look it up.
But the power company, the people working there, were very committed to it. They thought they were doing something good.
I think they're doing something good too.
We were kind of involved in it too, and I went to some meetings where their consultants seemed to think that a lot of
it was more fringe back then. It was newer back then.
In this case, there's more to it than that, but. I ended up being at some meetings where they thought that the science experts, experts in turtles and whales and such, would oppose it, but most of them say, well, it might cause a few problems, but it'll solve more problems than it causes. We were behind it, and their consultants were hiding in the audience, and you mean you like the idea? So they expect to get clobbered.
What a sales team. Run for your lives.
That's basically the way the meeting was. You had all these experts on wildlife and various types, and they thought people would, the people they invited would come up with a lot of problems, and no one did. They said, this is going to, it might cause some problems, but it's better than the alternatives.
So if you don't know, so my family and I.
But it was still killed. Now they're trying to have another one, but further offshore.
Okay. Cool. Okay.
So that's actually in the works right now.
Really?
I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't know that. So it's just how many are they talking about doing, or?
Again, I'm not the point person on this.
Right.
I'm not that conversant.
Are we talking about like shore level power, or are we just talking about experiments to see if it works?
Somewhere in between there.
Somewhere in between there. Okay, cool.
Serious source.
Real numbers, but not enough to power a county or something like that.
Maybe a few villages and lots of houses.
Hey, that's still a lot.
A significant.
Enough for dependable data.
Yeah,
for sure.
Oh, and more than that. Yeah, I mean, for real economic reasons.
Cool, excellent.
But it's further offshore. There's probably a few more technical problems with just having cables that long.
Right.
Some of the commercial fishermen oppose it because they might not be able to fish right there. However, at least...
or they might be able to fish really easily when it shorts out and kills all the fish. No,
hopefully not. But
I'm sure there'll be a computer in there that goes, up. we got a short.
Yeah,
impedance is wrong.
Definitely.
Because otherwise,
even the one we have, there's a computer there monitoring it all the time, and
because they do the bearings do go on those things on the so the turbines, there's an extreme amount of stress at the head, and the bearings go. That's usually the failure.
Yeah, we've had a little more trouble with motherboards, but.
Oh, okay,
we
interesting.
Haven't had that go.
Yeah, and it's usually spectacular when the bearings go because of course it burns up. It catches fire, and
I hope we don't have that type of spectacular.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's gonna. It's even though that's the common failure, the failure isn't common.
Right.
like we were. I was saying before.
A lot of the problems are overblown by the people who don't want to see them.
So we just drove cross country. We drove across Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, tons of these. I mean, they were just insane amounts of windmills. And yeah, sure, we saw a couple failed out of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. So there's going to be failures, but I mean, it'd probably be a little more because it's salt water. But still, even then, who cares if it's a 2% failure rate?
Yeah, and some of the parts are they're going to last. Oh, we're going to guarantee that for 5 years, and of course 5 years and 2 months later it fails.
Right.
But so there's been a couple of things like that, and then of course they are upgrading parts too.
Right. Cool. So thanks for keeping me posted on that. I was kind of curious what was happening.
Yeah, I have to dig around for it, but they are trying to get another one going a little further offshore and a little further east.
So I have to tell you, you are the creator, maybe the inadvertent creator of one of my favorite archetypes. So, this is awesome.
So I run now, or
no, don't run. This is great. You're gonna love this. So, I don't know if it was you that told me the story or it was Tom that told me the story. I think it might have been you actually. Mm-hmm. And you were telling me a story about you're talking about we were talking about a Linux conference, mm-hmm. and he was like, "Oh, I wouldn't go to a Linux conference. That's dumb. I'd be like going to a water conference." And you're like, "I go to water conferences all the time." And I was just like,
on Block Island.
Very little and perfect. Yes, yeah, of course, right. Mm-hmm. So it all depends on what you're. So yeah, if you're into water, you go to water conferences mm-hmm. all the time. And if you're into I just love that joke. It was a good one. Actually, I have this kind of goofy sentence that I just wanted to read to someone just because I wanted to read it out loud, but I think I'm just going to skip it. I was very proud because I haven't learned what copy pasta was until today. Mm-hmm. So I had no idea so I was like, how trendy can I sound in one? I'll read it. It's funny.
I'm going to inadvertently become a copy pasta just because of saying that.
Yeah, fine with me.
What copy pasta was until today.
I didn't know what copy pasta was till today. Is cancel culture just called the copy pasta culture? Is cancel culture just called out copy pasta culture? And if not, is doxing the catcall of the modern revolutionary? I have no idea what the hell that said.
No, a little bit,
right?
A little bit of it.
So you probably heard cancel culture before, right?
Yeah.
And you probably heard catcall, and you're like modern revolutionary. Okay, doxing, okay. Doxing is outing someone's personal information, and copy pasta is where basically people are just copying comments from each other, right? And I was thinking like, how can I tie all this stuff together? And then I wrote this sentence, and I'm thinking, I wonder if this is actually true. I'm not really sure. That'll become the copy pasta. I don't know. Anyway, but the thing is, the thing that it brings to mind is this idea. I have this idea of a complexity horizon, where the technology is advancing so fast. And actually, this is something I think that might be happening in biology now too. So it's definitely happening in IT. The technology is advancing so fast, the language used to describe the technology isn't keeping up. Right? And the fact that I can read a sentence like that to you, and these are all very common things on the internet, and I'm like, I can barely pronounce it. You're like, what? Most people have probably heard part of that at least, and we're like, what?
I'm trying to understand.
What is doxing? What is copy pasta? What is,
I guess my reaction to that was, I kind of know what the words mean, but I'm trying to figure out what the logic is of putting them together.
Yeah, well, so the logic would be, I'm not saying it's true or not, but the question is, cancel culture would be, when people, I don't want to say witch hunt, when people start an outcry for someone to be punished, right? Is it really just because? Is it really just because they don't know what they're doing and they're just copying what other people are saying?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And if that's true, if that's
they're just jumping on the bandwagon, they'll use an old phrase.
Yeah.
Okay, everyone's attacking him, so I'll attack him too. Kind of a crowd mentality.
Right. I mean, I'm a pretty big nerd. I just figured out what copy pasta was today. Like, I literally didn't even know till now. So, and so of course, doxing is outing someone's personal information, basically trying to destroy their lives. So it's the actual consequence of a cancel culture action, so to speak.
Yep.
Isn't that just the cat call, or kind of like the showing off of the modern revolutionary? And then I actually don't care about the answer, but look at how much I had to explain that just to make that sentence make sense. And this is what I'm talking about. I mean, this is a pop culture version, but there's tons of this with acronyms in the computer world, and the complexity horizon is just when you just whoop. If you're literally past the language to discuss what's happening.
It doesn't even have to be the revolutionary. It could be the reactionary too.
There you go. See? Yeah. Okay. Good thinking.
That's kind of what was throwing me.
Right. Yes. Reactionary.
That's why I was saying it was the logic of it that I found confusing, because it's.
Yeah. See, you got nothing to worry about with me. I think I have to worry about something with you on here. See, oh no, I've invited Jim on. What have I done? It's gonna outwit me at every turn. So, so the problem is, if you don't have the language to talk about technology, and this is, so one of the things that occurred to me recently, it hit me recently, is that biology has become a hard science, and it didn't used to always be a hard science, at least at the genetic level. Genetics is turning into a very much theoretical physics at this point. It's really getting, cut and dry in the CRISPR world, where people are just, people are just gene editing like this, and you can sequence stuff
and it's really the technology
minutes,
too.
and it's really, you can do proper controls, and it's very cheap, and you can iterate through different variations of DNA very quickly in living organisms. I mean, maybe not complex living organisms, but living organisms for sure. Gene therapy is still murky, but if it wasn't, disease would be cured. But for sure,
they have applied some of that to even humans.
Right.
In some cases, it's still very experimental, but
I mean, I'm like literally making up words every show trying to talk about the consequences of CRISPR, and like design. People say designer babies, but like, okay, what do you like? One of the things we were talking about on the show, like for the past few shows, is you get into like. Again, I'm not actually talking about the subject. I mean, we can talk about that too, but I'm talking about the language to talk about the subject. I call it the blue blood package, the no-brainer package that everybody with money will want to give their kids. Is the blue blood package moral? But of course, I have to explain what that is, because no one knows what the hell I'm talking about. I'm trying to use old words to describe a new concept, but I don't know. There may be multiple ones that may be too simple in a few years.
There are. It's not really my specialty in this. I'm more though. I'm not. I've certainly been around. When I was doing the degree, that department was mostly people working with genetics.
Right. I mean, there's huge money draws from the pharmaceutical industry for sure. Like half of them end up going there.
Yeah. So it wasn't particularly what I was trying to do, but I've learned a little bit.
So a lot of those people probably ended up working at my old job. That was where they filtered it to the genetics labs, or to pharmaceuticals, which is where those people go.
Well, a lot of them are maybe professors teaching people to do that.
Can the schools even afford the professors in this field anymore? I mean, I thought tech was hot. Damn,
Well, one's
You know, if you're really a
wait,
I'm not
where
talking
do
about
I-
if you're new and you just you get out with your PhD. I'm talking about if you're a wizard, really. It's actually the opposite. If you're new, you know, starting scientists are poor. You know, they're suffering. They don't have enough. But then they come out from that environment, and pharmaceutical offers them double their salary or triple their salary, and they're like, yes.
It becomes a moral problem.
Yeah,
And a lot of these issues are discussed, the ethics and such of things like that. It becomes an issue. But I've met people that quit pharmaceuticals.
So I have actually kind of a cool story. So I went in. I
Go
went
out and take a lower salary job just to get away from it.
I can give an example of that actually to make it more concrete for people. So actually I walked into a conference at Rock, and they were talking about the possibility of releasing sterilizing genetics into mosquitoes in live populations in real life.
There's been work like that for a long time.
Yeah. And of course, they were talking about, like, depending on how radical the change was, maybe they would do a test in isolation, on an island or something.
They've used it to exterminate some, not mosquitoes, but some parasitic flies and all out of islands.
Right. Of course, you absolutely want to do this.
Going back like 20, 25 years or so.
I mean, this is the holy grail. If it's reliable, it's the holy grail for invasive species. You want to get rid of them,
You'd need a vulnerable species.
You need to find a vulnerability
with some of them, in this case, if the sterilized males can outcompete the fertile males, and then and if it's a species where the females only mate once, then you have a species that's vulnerable to this type of approach.
Right. That's okay.
But if the female mates many times and can basically, and some species, this is the case, they can decide, okay, which packet do I want to
insects
use?
tend to be more mate once, and that's it, right?
There are millions of types of insects, and each has their own strategy.
Okay, so it's different.
So that's the point I'm trying to make.
Right.
I can't make a blanket statement about this.
Right.
And that's why I say,
and I'm not trying
it's a
to.
technique that'll only work on some specific.
I went down a rabbit hole there. I shouldn't have gone down.
Well, no. It's
so the point I was actually trying to make is
legitimate point. And one of the things they're doing with some of the mosquitoes is trying to breed mosquitoes that are immune to some of the diseases. So this benefits the mosquito because these parasites will make the mosquito sick, but they make us maybe dead.
Right.
So this is something where
so
you might be able to.
If you wrote down, need funding to try to build a better mosquito, some people would be horrified. But of course, the truth is that's actually to protect us.
So exactly. So this is something people are actually experimenting with and trying to do, and maybe starting to release in the wild.
Right.
So are mosquitoes that will be immune to some of the infectious diseases that cause us real problems.
Right.
And with the hope that this might actually have be a positive selective force on the mosquito as well.
Right.
If they're not getting sick, if they can reproduce better by being immune to the diseases that kill us, that would be kind of a win-win for us and the mosquito.
Right.
But so it might be a pest now, but at least
there's no risk of, say,
it might reduce the risk of
a parasitic worm being transmitted.
Well, this would be things like malaria or dengue or yellow fever. So
Zika.
Zika is
the hot one right now. Right,
yeah, it was a hot one a couple of years ago. It's still a problem down south, even then it seems to be a particular strain of Zika.
Right.
That was causing the microencephalitis.
Right.
But because it wasn't happening in other parts of the world where Zika was native.
Right.
So it seemed to be one genetic strain that hit South America.
Wow. We got real lucky with that, didn't we?
Well, we're lucky right now that it's still cold enough that
Right.
that doesn't get up here.
Right. Yeah, we still get the snow. So,
Yeah, so that particular...
I love snow. I love it when
it gets very complicated. So even the
8/10 of the biome dies off or goes to sleep for a few months.
Yeah, and if they're not one that overwinters with the disease organism,
Right.
some of them do.
Right. Yes.
That's why West Nile is still kind of around.
Right. It's not eradicated.
Yeah, but it probably won't be.
Did you hear they almost got the longhorn beetle? New York City's bragging about it. They're very excited about it.
That they
said
have it?
They almost
eliminated.
eradicated the longhorn beetle.
Yeah, I've been out in the field looking for trees that have it.
Cool.
With some.
Is it still a problem outside of the city, or?
I think it is.
Okay.
But
well, then it'll be back.
It started in the city, but okay. This could be a tip for anyone out there. If you can, like a regular pencil, a little bit, maybe about that diameter. If you have a borer in your tree that comes out and it's about the diameter of a standard pencil, you might want to call these people and have that tree taken down and burned.
Oh.
And that's what we have native borers, but they're smaller.
Right.
And less less likely to kill off trees.
Less destructive to the tree.
There are native species that are very similar. Some of them look almost identical.
My neighbor across the street had carpenter ants in one of his trees, and they came and cut it down.
Yeah.
So, and they're definitely native.
But that particular one, it's bigger, and you can literally get a pencil into the holes they come out.
So the reason I had brought up the mosquitoes is because apparently, so one of the things you can do if you're doing genetics is you can fluoresce. This was a story that came out in the Dystopia report, I don't know, a month or two ago. You can fluoresce the genes of the modified animals, so you can keep track of which animals have been changed. So they did this along with a modification in Brazil with the expectation that it would self-terminate, and it didn't. So they're still getting fluoresced mosquitoes many, like years later, many generations later. So it went wrong. So fortunately, it was a non-destructive test. But, so whatever they thought about mating behavior was incorrect. And now they have to go back to the beginning. So it can be really risky. Even if you think you know the behavior, it doesn't take that much aberration from the behavior
and biology,
to re-enter the gene pool and suddenly explode out.
And one of the things that if you're a biologist and if you're versed in evolution as being basically genetics and the mathematics of the genetics, and not getting involved in this is where you're following Darwin or something, but it's actually our knowledge of genetics comes from people studying evolution.
Yes.
So the progression.
Well, most people don't, in my opinion, in my pathetic troglodyte opinion, most people don't understand Darwin. They don't get it at all.
Yeah.
They get very excited about.
And Darwin wasn't always right.
I'm not saying epigenetics is always. I mean, clearly Mandelbrot is not perfect, right? Genetics is way broader than that, but
Mandelbrot.
Yeah, wasn't that the? Maybe I'm saying the wrong name.
Mandelbrot was
the one with the flowers.
Okay, Mandelbrot was fractals.
Right. Sorry, what am I saying?
One of my professors actually.
Who's the guy with the flowers? Sorry, my bad.
I'm trying to.
You know who we're talking about?
Yeah,
though, right?
yeah.
All right. Well, anyway, that guy. So.
Mendel.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mendel. Sorry. Hey, I was phonetically right.
They were close.
I was close. So Mendel. Sorry.
They were close enough to be confusing.
Yes. So Mendel's with the I knew that. A Mandelbrot set is a mathematical construct. What the hell is wrong with me? All right. Anyway. Mendel was Mendelian genetics is not correct.
Well, it's
not wrong. It's just only part of it.
He was either lucky or brilliant.
Yeah.
Because there were a lot of other people trying to understand inheritance at that time.
Right.
This was a very short time, just a few years after Darwin was publishing. And a lot of people were trying to study inheritance in more complex organisms, and it was confusing because it seemed to be blending.
Right.
So you had, and even Darwin thought of it as a blending, like you're mixing paint or something.
Right.
Which isn't quite right. But no one knew anything about the actual chemistry that underlies it.
Right.
Now, Mendel had gone, he was basically what in the American system would be like a high school teacher or a junior college professor. Mm-hmm. In Austria and a lot of the German-speaking world, the grading, the grades and how you advance in school are a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So he was teaching what in the American system would be like 11th to sophomore college.
Okay.
And so it was he wasn't a cloistered monk, it was a parochial school.
Right, yeah.
So that gets to be a misunderstanding a lot. And he went to a conference on Darwin's work. Mm-hmm. So he traveled, I think it was to Netherlands or someplace, several countries over. I think it was Netherlands, mm-hmm. To attend a conference on Darwin's work, and he was inspired to come back. And he picked peas. No one really knows, like I said, if he was brilliant and realized that there was something about the peas that made them particularly good,
right,
or he was just lucky.
Right.
But the peas have very clear dominance.
Human beings completely underestimate intuition. Continue.
It could be. It could
yes,
be.
I think probably brilliant is lucky sometimes.
Yeah. So, like I said, a lot of other people using other organisms where the inheritance wasn't clear.
Right.
He happened to pick one where you had complete dominance. This is what the geneticists call it. If anyone took these courses, I'm just repeating it. Mm-hmm. But so it could be pink or white. It could be wrinkly or smooth on the pea itself. So very clear differences, and that's kind of unusual.
Right.
And then he published it, and it was forgotten for about 30, 40 years. Mm-hmm. And there was this big debate about is speciation like a punctuated, you have a mutation and you suddenly have another species, or is it gradual change? Mm-hmm. And so there was an argument, big argument going on about these two schools.
Has that been resolved? I mean, I don't.
Yeah, definitely. It was.
But
resolved,
I mean, we don't.
It was resolved about 100 years ago at this point.
No, I know that, but I mean, like what I'm trying to say is that, like, yeah, it just seems like...
It actually goes back to statistics.
Is there something smaller than species? Because there's clearly...
Oh, it's blurry.
That's what I'm talking about,
It's...
Yeah.
It's gotten...
That's what I mean by it wasn't resolved.
It's gotten... Well, it's resolved in that, is this even an issue?
Right, yes, yeah.
It's just... Some of the taxonomists are at the point where they want to...
where they just slap the double helix on the table. That.
Yeah, basically.
Every single creature is a new species.
Well, not a new species. They just want. There are some of the people that you don't hear about in public, but they just want to remove the concept of species entirely.
Okay, no, I respect that.
And just look at it as shades
This
of
is
gray.
spectacular.
It gets very...
You have never heard that somewhere before, and actually that's probably a smart idea.
They just want to assign numbers and degrees of separation.
Right.
But get rid of the... Get rid of the concept of species. But it's too ingrained, and how are you going to try to explain things to the average person?
Right.
So it's... even people, I know people who are kind of surprised to hear this. Actually, I took a course with someone that I had known for a while, and we traveled down to Ecuador, mm-hmm. and we spent some time in the Galapagos and some time in the Amazon. And I gave a talk.
This is how scientists take cruises. They go to the Galapagos.
They take a course, yes. You take a graduate course and spend the whole time studying in remote, exotic places.
Stare at turtles for a few days.
Yeah, another course, it was cramming while the manta rays were jumping and what have you, and we got to study for the test.
Yeah.
But in this case, she had been a field biologist and taken classes around, and used to looking up birds and flowers and such as if they were very distinct species. So part of it, taking this course as a graduate student, you had to give a presentation. I gave a presentation on sexual selection, and you had to use examples that lived in Ecuador.
Okay.
Either on the Galapagos or in the Amazon or such, and or even in the Andes. So I came up with a couple of different species where you had like ring species, and actually the place we were in the Amazon was where some researchers on a paper I used had actually done their research. So the guides were trying to show me this particular frog. They brought me to the place where the researchers had been doing the work in the paper I was using for this presentation. So at any rate, the situation here was a ring species is basically where you can follow the small gradations around, and by the time they come back, they treat each other as different species.
Yes, please. Oh, awesome.
Definitely. A savior.
See, and this is a proof that
More
psychic
fuel.
powers are evolving.
Yes. But, so at any rate,
Or I rang a bell, one of those.
you get like a ring.
Thanks so much.
Bell works.
Where
Bell works?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
you have total genetic integration along the way. Total gradation, but by the time they come back to each other, they won't see each other as the same species.
Ah, okay. Oh, okay, I see. So that's the ring model.
Yes.
So that's
And
why we've got to get away from the
several-
species, because it's really, everything's really realistically
you can't
using the ring
totally
model.
get away from it, but this confuses. It seemed to confuse this person that I had known for a while.
Right.
Because she was used to strict categorizations, and here I am talking about.
It's because they beat it into you in school, that's why.
Yeah, well, she made a living at it.
Yeah, right.
But here I was talking about the sexual selection. In this case, with the frogs, it had to do with the male's call.
Right.
And the call was a little different through the ring, and by the time they came back, the calls were different enough that the female would listen to one or the other,
Right.
and didn't hybridize.
Ah.
And you had similar situations.
So maybe that's so if you had to throw a dart at a
so if the
board, like when is the ring complete then? When have you hit? Is it always the sexual selection that?
in this case, it was. It
was
often is.
It often is the
But
sexual. Close enough.
I think
good.
there's some cases around the. I'm a little rusty.
I knew
on
there was
that.
a straight answer.
Well,
I knew there was a straight answer.
Biology has very few straight
Yeah.
answers.
No.
Well, that's what makes it interesting. That's what, to me, the very complexity is what I found interesting.
I know, I get it. And who knows? Maybe we'll find out later that one ring was not sufficient, that it's actually a series of rings.
Well, the thing is here, the situation here is if the habitat partway around the ring becomes not good, where they kind of go locally extinct in that middle and cut the two parts off, then they will become two different separate species.
Right, okay. So if the ring is
it's
interrupted.
like subspecies, because there's kind of a gradation around here, and it becomes.
So I was using the word breed in the absence of knowing the word, as opposed to subspecies. So, but I guess subspecies is the right.
The subspecies breed. It's really. This is why some of the people want to. But
it's not. I like your criteria better. Sexual compatibility was the old way, but actually, it's not really that. It's willingness to mate.
That's a lot of it.
Yeah.
There are different
Like
the
choices,
different
whether it's biologically driven or choice driven, it doesn't really matter. It's the willingness to mate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have the biological species, which is what you were thinking of.
Right, right.
Which is one definition.
I thought about all this a lot because it has to do with my theory. That's
Right.
why.
But what most people think of as different species often can hybridize. They just don't want to.
Right.
And it really can get very blurry.
So in other words, you ugly.
Well, for example,
You sound funny.
a local example. A local example.
Yeah.
The coyotes that are getting onto Long Island.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are these actual coyotes or are these the hybrid coyotes?
The hybrid ones.
Yeah. Oh, the hybrid ones. Okay. So in case you haven't heard about this, there's a breed of hybrid coyotes that are part coyote, part wolf, and a small part dog.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Coyotes or something or whatever they're calling
You
them.
want to, yeah,
Doesn't really matter.
your choice.
Right. Right.
But then they're not the pure Western coyote.
Right. They're kind
and
of they're
don't
different.
act like
They're
it
really a
either.
different species, honestly.
To a great degree, that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
You have
We built a better coyote.
yeah, a coyote that's better at adapting to man's habitat.
Right. Yes.
And that's basically what's happened. These have been selected just by being in suburbia and in rural, fairly built-up rural areas in the East Coast, where in order to survive where the wolves can't survive, where the original coyotes can't survive, you now have this hybrid that has become more true breeding that can pack like a wolf.
Coy wolves. That's the
Yeah.
moniker people are using.
Yeah. For a while they were saying coy dogs, but that's not quite, it's more coy wolves. There are dog genes in there, and they do seem to sense humans and understand human intent more like a dog. They seem to have picked that up. They can pack so that they can
conversation's gold,
survive
man.
against.
This conversation is this. It's pure gold. Actually, this is fake gold, but
Yeah, you're fake.
if I had that much gold, I wouldn't bring it here with me.
So they'd be a little heavy too.
Like, table will be on the ground.
Yes. So they seem to have picked up a mixture of traits that help them survive around dogs. They're better than a lone coyote wolf would. They can form packs and hold up against competition that way, more like a wolf. So they picked up some of that behavior.
It's dogs too. Wild dogs will, or
again-
stray dogs will pack together.
Oh, I have some stories.
Too. Okay.
I have run into that in the field, yes.
Oh no!
It's very interesting.
You've been chased by stray dogs.
I didn't run.
Okay, fair enough. Right. You knew probably from motorcycling, right? You see a dog, you don't run.
Well, this is even, yeah.
Yeah.
Just from being there. Yeah, this was like tracking stream systems and all in some of the places, and I literally found myself in middle of Phragmites, where you can't see 2 feet, surrounded by dogs, feral dogs. I could hear them breathing like just a few feet away, and I just kept moving, and they just kept kind of following me until I finally got out of the.
Well, I would argue that
it wasn't the most pleasant situation. But
Right.
I just kept moving.
Yeah,
I didn't run.
I wonder if that's the advantage. One of the advantages of the coy wolves is that that kind of that temperance toward people. Like, I don't want to mess with that.
It's exactly right.
Yeah.
They're very shy.
They know not to mess with us. Leave people alone. That might be the only thing that's different about
yeah.
them. Yeah. Leave people alone. They're friends or leave them alone.
And that's basically what I was saying. They seem to sense humans and human intent better than the original wild species.
Right.
And that lets them hide in neighborhoods and such, and where they can be around and people won't even know they're there.
This is beautiful. So actually,
It makes them a better stealth species.
Right.
Than
I think
pure
that
coyotes or wolves.
if barring humans, they might be the best species on Earth. And the reason, so here's where I
They're
come
adapted to us.
in. Right. They're adapted to us, but they might be adapted. So I have an alternative.
If it was a pure wild
I have an alternative
situation,
explanation.
they're not invading the woods. They're not invading the deserts.
Right.
That's where the original wild species are still doing well.
Right.
Or do better.
Well,
have a
it's the most
competitive
it's the most adaptive to change. So you couldn't necessarily say. I know it's not. I know that's a misnomer. It didn't really say that, but it's still accurate.
There's always change.
Right.
They're all adapted to change.
Well, humans are the
this
most
case-
successful because we can adapt to change most quickly.
Yeah.
Yes. So they
memes along
they
with
might
the
be the
genes.
second quickest to adapt to change on the planet.
Well,
other than us. Because our environment's constantly changing.
And so I really want to say it's a bit more specific than that. They became adapted to the artificial habitat we created.
Right.
They were not as well adapted to the wild habitat of either of the parent species.
Right. But they probably could still survive in it. I know there's coywolf. If you see the map of where they're living, some of the places are completely rural, so they can function in full non-humanized areas.
Rural, not. Really.
I mean, it might be not. They might not
the
be
North Woods, not the desert, not
Right.
really more pristine areas.
Well, I mean, wolves won't spend any time in the desert either. They prefer Yellowstone or
exactly
the woods.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And the hybrid's not really invading those habitats.
Right.
They're the farms, the partially logged woods, and your suburban neighborhoods.
Yeah, I'm more looking at it from the behavioral kind of point of view. And
Definitely.
Yeah, as long as there's woods, they'll be around. Yeah, they're not going anywhere now. I mean, I guess that's not true either, though, because we could theoretically, on one hand, it's a stupid human thing. I'm like, yes, I'm pulling for the underdog, literally the underdog. But I'm pulling for the underdog that they succeed. But of course, at some point we will be able to genetically engineer invasive species. They're a new species, so that we have to make a decision. Are these guys invasive, or because they're a new species, should we leave them alone and let them, it'll come down to if they're crowding anything out.
That's like 21st century away. Come on, leave them alone.
In this case,
We must murder them because they're cute and they're non-dangerous.
well, in this case, they can be dangerous, but
Have there been coywolves attacks?
Not here on the East Coast, but the actual coyotes.
Well, coyotes
in Los Angeles, there have been attacks in the.
See, I'd be curious if there'd be any coywolf attacks, because I bet there wouldn't be, right? And if we were going to be like, okay, coyotes or coywolves? Coywolves don't attack us. Let's kill off the coyotes. Kind of like.
Well, it's.
Well, we would just leave them alone too, right? Because we don't want to mess with nature. And
we'll see.
the curious case of the coywolf, right? This is exactly what this show is about. Is this kind of there isn't an answer. I mean, you can't answer it, and I can't answer it because there is no answer.
The answer's in the future.
The answer's in the future. Good luck.
We'll find
Enjoy
out
this can we just kicked to you, future people.
If there's an attack, then we'll know there's an attack if there is one.
Right. And
So
actually,
there is that risk.
they probably have to live up to a better standard than the coyotes do,
Yeah.
or the wolves do, because they're not natural. But if they never attack people, or they attack so infrequently that it's not even comparable,
Right.
It might come to a point where,
Well, they're kind of.
we might leave them.
Well, the thing is, and here's the real point.
Right.
It's more that they're so adapted to us, we don't even know when they're there.
Right.
And we can't attack them. We don't realize we would want to attack them if we don't know they're there.
Right.
That's why I said they were like a stealth species.
Yeah. That's awesome. There's going to be more. Yeah, there'll be more.
Well, they're
More stealth species that don't even exist yet. They're going to come.
Species so adapted to us, we have they'll be more like cockroaches or something that we have a hard time doing anything about, even if they are harmful.
So
that's basically what it is. At least this is an argument I've made for a number of years, is if we're so antagonistic to the kind of innocuous ones, they'll be replaced by ones that are better adapted at resisting us.
Right. Or hiding. But sometimes it'll be resisting. Sometimes it'll be resistant. Right. Either attacking or hiding.
Well, maybe not directly attacking, but being a pest, but one kind of your local. I was going to say your local trash pandas, except the coyotes are probably starting to eliminate them.
Right. Yeah.
Because, that's one.
That's interesting, right?
Yeah.
So we had this one that was really well adapted, that was just naturally adapted to humans, and now we're replacing them with one that's actually evolved, co-evolved with humans.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. I have no idea what the implication of that is.
No one does.
No one does. Yeah. I love that. That's great.
Like I said,
it's a good intelligence.
Really complicated.
It's a good intelligence test, right? Or at least a good humility test.
Yes.
Do you know the answer? No.
No one does.
No. Coywolves. All right. Wow, we went from windmills to coywolves without stopping once. That's awesome. This is why I love you, man. I know you had mentioned to me that you were working on some map languages at one point. So, like, in other words, there was some open source map coordinate systems that you were working with. I don't recall the name
not really
of them.
Coordinate systems. They're okay for a while. This is quite a few years ago. We did have a commercial product that didn't do all the things we needed to do.
Okay.
So
I know some of it's GPS and geolocation through GPS. And
at least that's what. Okay, maybe I'll make it a little more clear. We use GIS, but we might not use it the way the average person does, because to a great degree our whole mode is to create new data.
Right.
So GPS is a way of doing that.
Right.
So we'll go out and we'll GPS bird nests. We'll go out and use GPS to get nice vertical data on beaches or marshes. And
you need a format to store that.
Or even to interpret it. Formatting it, storing it could be CSVs, could be one of the proprietary, it could be in a database, it could be in PostgreSQL or your SQL systems
MySQL
you were talking about before.
Right.
So there are ways of...
So SQL is a database standard that came out in the 70s and...
IBM.
Yeah, IBM, and then there's been various implementations of it, and the big one was MySQL, PostgreSQL is the next one, and actually My has been split more, like the original developers of My are now doing Maria, so now it's MariaDB, and there's about a bazillion of them, but there's a bunch of the SQL languages, databases are all similar in their structure, although they can vary quite a bit.
Yeah, the lange is pretty similar, and then
they're pretty similar.
Extended and particular tweaks, and what might be an efficient SQL code in one might be inefficient in another, and vice versa.
Which, and it sounds like...
Because the underlying engine is different.
It almost sounds like nitpicking. What is the origin of nitpicking? I don't even know what that is.
And it's like the little... Yeah, on your clothes get like these little balls.
Right? Is that it? It's just what it sounds like.
And
that's a nit.
You pick them off to get the clothes.
Look at that!
Smoother.
I don't even need a fact check. He was going to fact check that for us. Once in a while, I'll use an idiom, and I'll go, "What does that mean?"
The phrase comes from the task of removing tiny eggs of lice, nits, from someone's hair or clothing. It's an activity that required close attention and care.
Yep. Yeah. The eggs on.
Okay. Good. So I haven't said something untoward. So.
Right. So the egg sacs from the lice and such. Yeah.
Right. So
I think it also does still apply to the similar things that'll be on clothing, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't totally wrong, but
right. Okay. Yeah, anyway, I don't even know what the hell we were talking about. So we were talking about SQL.
Right.
And so...
The nitpicking was how to write the most efficient code.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So we're not just nitpicking here.
When I was teaching computer science...
when you have massive databases, it matters. Like it does. It's, oh, that's only 1 second. Well, what about when you have a billion records? Now it's 3 hours.
That's or a billion seconds.
Yeah.
This is more than 3 hours.
Yeah, a lot more. So... so you get the...
But so at any rate, what I was trying to say was that there's many ways of storing these data sets, and that's not really what I was talking about.
Right.
I was talking about collecting it in the first place.
Right.
Getting out in the field and trying to understand what's going on out in the real world and the changes in the real world.
Right.
Because you go out one time and you get one data set, then you go out another time, you get a different data set.
Do you spend most of your time in the field or most of your time in the office, or split evenly, or?
Split.
Okay.
Split. A lot of what's in the office is bureaucratic stuff anyway.
Observing and measuring, and then you're back in the office compiling.
No, that's the more interesting part. When I say bureaucratic, I mean reports. I mean trying to get funding.
Well, you guys function on grants, I'm sure, right?
Yeah.
So you have to satisfy the conditions of the grants.
Exactly. So
all of science is like this.
A lot of the time is spent just on tearing our hair out trying to keep up with this stuff, so that we can then go out and collect data in the field, and then do statistics or spatial analysis on it, depending on what the data set is.
And then, when all that's done, if you're not too exhausted to keep your eyes open, actually look for a trend in there somewhere.
Oh, well, yeah, definitely.
That's the good part, right?
Yeah, that's what you're trying to...
Well, that's the real point of the science.
Yeah, exactly.
You're trying to figure out what the heck...
to that.
What's happened and what's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah. Cool. All right, by the way, I just want to remind people, feel free to ask listener questions if you guys have anything you want to ask. And actually, I have one for you, and this is kind of like off of the. This is actually for my son. So my son peppered me with questions, and I was able to answer most of them pretty.
Now you're going to embarrass me. It's going to be something I don't know. Right?
No, he's 9. Don't worry. So he asked me. Let's see. He asked me something about paleontology. He asked me something about. There's some other biology question he asked me about. A lot of really good questions, especially for a 9-year-old. I knew the answers to all of them, but I didn't really know the answer to the one, which is how do gills work?
It's mainly a gas exchange system, and notice I'm saying mainly. So you have the gill arches, which is kind of a bone or a cartilage that kind of holds the shape, and then the blood will come in, and the fresh blood will come to the back of the system. Water flows the other way. And
so water flow is important. The fish has to be moving, or the water has to be moving?
It's what's called a countercurrent system.
Okay.
So that, for example, if you're going to look at oxygen, it's not the only thing to look at. Oxygen versus carbon dioxide. The blood coming in will be high in carbon dioxide, and the water will be high in oxygen. And the idea is that you want the part of the blood with the highest carbon dioxide to be in touch with the water that has the higher carbon dioxide, but not so that there's a gradient there. And then as you move forward through the system, you'll maintain a gradient, so the part of the blood with the least carbon dioxide is next to the water with the least carbon dioxide, so that it can still release some to the water.
Oh, okay, I see.
At the same time, then, you'll also have the blood with the highest oxygen or next to the water that has the highest oxygen, because this is going to be the exact same thing, but you kind of have the two different gradients going. So when it's coming in, it'll have the highest carbon dioxide, but the least oxygen, and that'll be the water that's already been drained of a lot of oxygen, passing earlier in the gill. And then as you go through it, as you get to the forward end of the gill, you'll have the highest oxygen water against the highest oxygen blood, So, but there'll still be a gradient. So the oxygen can still get into the blood.
See, I thought I got it at first, and now I don't think I get it anymore.
Shall I draw a picture?
Yeah, no, I mean, so
the counter current system, they're going opposite directions.
So I assume the blood,
maintaining
the fish have
gradient.
red blood cells just like we do, and then
Yes.
they absorb the oxygen. The opportunity to grab the oxygen is
So you're trying to get rid of the carbon dioxide.
well, of course,
You're trying
right?
to get the oxygen.
Yeah.
And that's the red blood cells, but it goes do other things as well. See,
They do?
Oh yeah, fish. One of the things that's very
Yeah, I
different,
totally didn't know this.
that's different with fish than us. When we burn proteins or such, we're going to be the carbon in the proteins is going to be combined with oxygen to form carbon dioxide, and all will burn it off, the same as sugars and such. But that proteins are about 15% nitrogen. They'll have by weight. They'll also might have phosphates or potassium or other atoms, depending on which amino acid it is, or if it's DNA or some other organic chemical that we might want to burn off as fuel. You know, when we eat meat or beans or whatever. You know, if you're a vegan, you still need proteins, and but we might consume more than we have to use to repair our cells, and the excess will get burnt off to have energy.
Right.
But you have all these other nitrogen phosphates and what have you to get rid of now.
Right.
So in the fish, a little bit might be as urea, but most of it is removed as a gas, ammonia.
Really?
So the gills are also going to be where most of the nitrogenous waste is released from the fish into the environment.
So fish aren't just producing carbon dioxide; they're also in a smaller portion producing ammonia.
Yeah.
Wow, I had no idea.
Most people don't. They don't realize
right?
The actual.
And the ammonia, of course, is nitrogen rich, right? Because
well, that's it's NH4.
Right. So then the ammonia breaks down into
hydrogen. That's it.
And so the ammonia breaks down into nitrogen, and so the nitrogen.
It's not that it breaks down to nitrogen.
Well, I mean, it doesn't stay ammonia forever, right? I mean.
Well. Ammonia has a very short half-life in
that's what I mean.
In a healthy environment. It's usually picked up by phytoplankton or plants or something.
Oh, so other organisms break it down. So
they don't break it down so much as build it up. I mean, ammonia is the broken down version.
Right.
And they'll pull it in.
Oh.
They'll pull it in to make the plants will then make the protein.
Ammonia is a simpler version of the molecule.
Yeah.
And then they'll use pieces of ammonia in pieces to make it the more complex molecules.
Okay,
I understand now.
You go back to the proteins again.
Right.
The amino acids and such. So I mentioned beans before.
Right.
That's basically what it is. Beans are interesting in that they have symbiotic, I think they're actually archaea in the roots that will take the nitrogen from the air, have to put energy into it to create nitrates or versions, nitrogen compounds that the plant can then pick up and use to make proteins and amino acids, make the amino acids and the DNA and the other building blocks of life. And then they give the bacteria sugars and such so that the bacteria can. It's a symbiotic organism.
So this is directly applies to what you're doing for a living right now. Yeah. So
for example, kind of.
I assume you're taking a lot of water samples, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, for example, how you go to the beach, you see the beach grass on the dunes. How is that grass going to grow in sand?
It's well. Plants they can take the nitrogen from the air.
No, they can't.
They can't? Well, those plants can't. Some plants can't they? I thought plants could take nitrogen from the air.
No.
But they need nitrogen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
But, well, they have
Well, now you tell me.
like
This is obviously a trick question.
Well,
No tricking me.
Well, in a way, I segued into it because
Right.
I was talking about beans, but the beach grass also has symbiotic bacteria.
Okay.
So it's the bacteria.
Well, I know like 20
it's
years
the
ago,
simple organisms
or
that
15 years ago, we just realized
have the
that,
trick of
like,
doing it.
that's the same thing with tree roots, that they have symbiotic. That was actually a pretty recent discovery.
It's not that recent, but
Or maybe it was recent for me?
It's become more widely known.
It's become better understood.
Yes.
Okay.
So even many, many years ago, I knew people who were doing research on fungi that are symbionts with trees.
Well, you know, this is funny because also people are starting to figure this out about themselves and probiotics.
Yeah.
And I don't want to use antibiotics to kill off everything in my body because
Yeah.
then I start getting sick.
Yes.
Because I can't digest food anymore. Not the same anyway.
Or the
Not as well.
What often the microorganisms are competing with each other a lot of the time.
Right, and they're holding each other
So
at bay.
if we're kind of infected with, or if we're our how shall I say, our body load is
Right.
of ones that are harmless to us, but antagonistic to the
harmful
disease
ones.
right?
Yeah.
That's good for us.
Right.
And there's apparently we're learning more implications that I'm not that familiar with, but at least that's the whole idea with the probiotics and such.
Right.
That if we have a body load of ones that are harmless to us, or at least ones that we're used to,
Yeah.
you know.
The effects are minimized.
Yes. And, of course, if good old Montezuma's revenge, that's...
Right.
They're used to it, but you might have to get used to it when you go into another
Right,
country.
yeah, fair enough.
And then they come here.
You change your environment and yeah.
Yeah, you might have to, your body might have to get used to the local version.
Enjoy your America pox.
Yeah. So, but at any rate, whichever of these less, how shall I say, ones that we can live with,
Right.
that aren't actually harmful,
Right.
they'll help keep out the ones that can really cause disease under normal circumstances. So it's very, very.
So since I've got Jim here teaching me biology,
Well, that's my job.
yeah. No, I'm enjoying it. It's great. And actually, the thing is,
It doesn't work
I'm not
100%.
I'm not promising I don't actually know all the things I pretended to not know. I got to say this because I've had a dumb look on my face a lot of times now during this conversation. I mean, I've been dumb in all of them. I do occasionally play a ringer, but for the most part, no, I haven't. I've been surprised most of the times that you surprised me. But so this brings up another question. So I mean, we know that your beach grass, your dune grass, have a symbiotic relationship. We know that the trees do. We know that we do. We know it's a pretty good guess that other animals have the similar probiotic kind of relationship in their guts.
The more
Is there anything in nature that doesn't have these kind of symbiotic
Probably
relations? Probably not. Okay, that's what I would think too.
Yeah,
it seems to be a pattern.
Again, this is what I said earlier. Biology is immensely complicated, makes it extremely interesting. One of the reasons I went in, that I prefer to work with it than something else.
This is totally off the cuff, but this is kind of
challenging.
This is kind of a cool segue. So I've had a lot of people. Some people who come on here have very strong views about supernatural stuff. Or maybe not so supernatural stuff. And I've often made the analogy to them that really that if you're dealing with aliens or God or if we're living in a matrix, it's all kind of the same problem. At some point there's an administrator and he's in charge of us and he's making decisions, right? And I'm not saying any of them are right, but or if there's alien life and it's spacefaring and has some kind of faster than light equivalent, that they're probably already here, keeping an eye on us, because why wouldn't you keep an eye on us? My God, and
staying very quiet.
They're staying very well. I mean, but wouldn't you? Right? I mean,
there's.
I mean, sure, you can go help, but then it's official. Then you're in.
Or are we alone?
Or are we alone? Right. We might be alone. It's possible, but
or at least as.
I think if they're not here already, we probably are alone, or at least faster than light's not possible.
Technologically alone.
Okay. all right, that's possible.
You know,
So
like
I tend towards we're not alone.
Microorganisms and
Hey, you know what?
simpler forms are almost.
That's good.
Almost
You're
for
consistent. So
Yeah.
you know we're alone, and that makes sense. You know,
As humans, as
but I laugh when
the
everybody's.
technology that we have here in this room,
And actually, the reason I bring this,
making the noise on the radio wavelengths and such.
where there are meat flaps, and then you know it sends bits over the internet and whatnot. Yeah. So the reason I ask is because looking at, you know, in computer science, there's a concept of embarrassingly parallel, right? Where you have, you know, you want your ideal problems are embarrassingly parallel because they can be broken up into infinitely small pieces. But generally speaking, the more elements you have to take into a calculation, the less embarrassingly parallel it is. And of course, it sounds like biology is the opposite of embarrassingly parallel. Like, it would be the hardest simulation in the world to do, because it would be to have consistent results at the tiniest possible molecular scale across the entire planet with slight variations across the entire planet would require a simulation of simulating every single atom.
I'll come up with a quote that.
So it's almost like if you're really into biology, it kind of like almost disproves that the matrix is possible, right? Because if anybody would be able to peek under the curtain of the matrix, it would be you, right? You know what I'm saying? Because you're poking in the tiniest, darkest, and least looked at corners. Does that make sense?
One of my favorite quotes, which is kind of pertinent to this, from one of the professors over at Stony Brook, and at least within that department, it's very popular. And this has to do with just trying to understand the interactions between different species and different individuals within a species and such. Maybe I'll give you a little background. I don't know if you're familiar with some of the physics concepts. Have you ever heard of the three-body problem?
Maybe, but doesn't sound familiar.
Or jointed pendulum.
No, I haven't heard that.
There's a lot of simulations of this. You know, it's not that difficult to program, but basically, if you have in space, you were talking about that. If you have three objects orbiting each other and such, it becomes extremely complex. You can't really,
it's a computer science problem.
Well, yeah, it can be. Yeah, definitely.
Like a traveling salesman, that problem. That has still not been solved.
A little different.
No, but I'm saying that's also another example of...
You get into these NP complete problems, but this is more a chaos theory and more Mandelbrot sets, and to segue back to where we were.
Yeah.
But more into that. The jointed pendulum, for example, and you can see simulations. You can Google this and get simulations on the internet, or you can really make a real one. So, which basically has 3 points.
How are we doing that?
You have the weight on the bottom, the joint, and the hinge.
Right.
And it becomes you can't. Slight variations.
What the fuck? It's 10:29.
Did we go through it that fast? Were we almost over?
Is this for real? We have how long?
45.
45. Okay, so we started a little late.
Yeah.
Still, holy shit.
We can burn through time.
What the I barely took the questions. Sorry, I apologize for excuse my French. You feel it too, right? It feels like it just... All right, keep going.
So at any rate,
the jointed pendulum with the three segments.
Yeah. So the slight variations in how you start this, it will just come up with a totally different pattern. So if you basically just have three interacting planets, three interacting joints on this, you can get a system that can go chaotic. Okay. Picture a species with millions or thousands or millions of individuals. Now picture this species interacting with millions of other species.
And then those, and then
So-
repeat for every microbiome on Earth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is the kind of the background to this quote. So this one professor, what he came up with, he does computer simulations of ecosystems and such.
Right,
It's
right.
his specialty.
Probably a lot of shortcuts he's taken right there. Yeah.
Well,
He has to. I mean, there's only so many computers.
in a way, there's going to be a lot of shortcuts, but let me give you the quote first.
Okay.
His quote is, "Ecosystems are not rocket science. They are far more difficult."
Yes. Yes.
So, and
Well, rocket
a
rocket science, you know,
is often
you have
synonymous with
5
something
or
complex.
10 or 15 materials, and you have the interactions
more
of the
than
points
that.
where the materials are touching each other, and
There's a lot of
that's
complex wiring. There's
I know, but I'm saying compared to biology, it's mice nuts. He's right.
Yeah. Well, the thing here's the main thing that at least the way I see it.
Right.
You have these very complex systems, but engineers, and I went through the whole calculus program with a bunch of engineers. I was the only biologist in there, and so and I talk to engineers. I deal with engineers too, and it is really difficult stuff. But one of the shortcuts that they take is that here's a system, maybe it is curvilinear or it has some feedbacks and such, but we're only going to be dealing with this within a certain range of values. You know, wind speeds or water speeds or whatever it is. So we'll look at this range of values. If we have to deal with something more complex, we'll have to make adjustments, but they'll usually draw a straight line through what's a curve and use that as an approximation.
Right, of course.
I mean, you might have to get into turbulence and some other things where it really gets more complicated, but if you can avoid it, you try to avoid it. In biology, that's the interesting part.
Right.
It is the nonlinearities. It is the cycles. It is the craziness.
Well, so here's the problem is that I think in a lot of those other sciences, it's actually they're not really science problems they're trying to solve. They're engineering problems they're trying to solve. For me, here's where I'm going to disagree with what you said, but agree in a broader way, which is that good science is always at the periphery. It's never the mean. It's always the weird cases. It's always the edge.
Well,
You're always, because if it's the mean, you already know it, you know?
Yeah. This gets into a little bit of what the kind of the general public thought of what science is and what scientists think science is.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah. So like a common phrase is getting something down to a science. It means you're going to be getting something to a known.
They should be getting things down to engineering, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
Where science is really, the whole point of science is, okay, well, no one knows this yet. I have an idea of what that might be. Well, let's test that. Maybe it's wrong. Okay, let's try another one. Maybe someone else has a better idea. But you're trying to move the kind of the total knowledge of humanity forward. You're trying to find out things nobody knows and push that envelope. That's what science is.
Yes, agreed. Yeah, that's it. The edge of the curve. That's it's always that. And it's funny. So a lot of people will misuse science, and they'll be like, "Oh, science disproves the supernatural."
Yeah,
no,
it's a method. It's not
just
real.
Science just ignores the supernatural. You know.
Okay, this goes into.
It just said, "Oh, we just don't know about that yet." Just
I mean, not everyone
we can't measure
likes
it. We're not.
The philosopher of science, Karl Popper. He was very active through the 50s and 60s and looking at how Einstein did his work and such. So he came up with the concept of falsifiability.
Yes. Oh, I love falsifiability.
So exactly. So that's a Karl Popper contribution.
I've actually seen the argument made in public that falsifiability is bullshit.
Some people disagree with it. But the idea is
I think they're wrong. I think they're dead wrong. I think it's a great. At least
that was his approach.
Right. Yeah, I think it's an approach. Exactly. And it's a valid approach to science.
And the basic thing there was, if it's not falsifiable, then you cannot really approve it or disprove it. And then it's not science.
Wow.
And so that was his argument.
I want to hug science right now. That's awesome. Yeah, I completely agree. He's right.
This also kind of segues back to what we were talking about with evolution. He tried to argue that evolution was a tautology, that it was because he was looking at the simple view of, okay, it's the survival of the fittest, and what's the fittest? It's the ones that survive, and that just goes circular. So it was actually one of the Stony Brook professors who retired about a year or so ago, and some of the people he co-authored with, and that took Popper on.
Was it Gary Shaw? Because I know him.
No, the particular person was Doug Fatuma that was at Stony Brook, and some of the people he co-authored with, and took him on and unravel this what people think of as evolution and selection, and again, this also genetics and all, and it goes down to the genetics,
right?
Because it's really the survival of your progeny and their progeny. And that's something you can attach numbers to.
Right.
And of the various enterprises.
Which comes back to the ring and how you were describing it before.
Well, that's an example of...
well, it seems like there's an opportunity for a formula if those two things are absolutely true. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's genetics. It's the chemistry.
Right.
In that case.
A Mendel kind of formula.
Well, it's not really Mendelian. Because it's
no, it wouldn't be Mendelian, but that style, something concrete like that. It seems like there could be an undiscovered concrete formula there. Yes. Okay.
And it has to do with the odds of one set of genes having great grandchildren on versus the other one, and with how these potential populations compete with each other, which is more like what we were talking about with the wolves and the coyotes and such.
Yeah, the coywolves. Yeah,
the coywolves.
You know what I love about
it's not Mendelian in that you don't have the single gene that changes things.
Right.
And this really goes back to statistics again. The person who really unraveled that and settled that argument to a great degree was Sir Roger Fisher, the statistician.
Okay.
It's like the F tests and such, if you're into statistics.
Yeah, I'm rusty.
Yeah, well, even if you're rusty, you recognize the reference.
Right.
So he was very active the early part of the 20th century, and he delved into the biology and that they were actually hypothesizing genes as specific. They didn't understand the chemistry yet, but the genes at that point were a theoretical, mathematical construct.
Right.
And what he pointed out is that if you have a whole set of genes that each contribute a little bit to a trait, it looks like it's blending.
Right.
Even though the specific genes might...
It's just the calculation's so freaking complex, you can't reverse it.
Yeah, something like that, like skin color.
Right.
In humans is controlled by several genes.
Yeah.
So
just to put things,
depending on what your inheritance is, you might have 2 or 3 for darker skin and lots of others for lighter skin.
Right,
And
right.
so you have kind of a semi-dark skin, or you tan easily.
Right, right. So just for people to put this in terms, in math terms,
Which is what this is.
if you're not a mathematician, usually if you have a problem with more than 2 variables, you can't really solve it. You can sometimes, but sometimes you can't.
This is more kind of
But
somewhat additive.
Yeah.
Or though there can be synergies.
Right. But I'm saying, as you add variables, the solvability becomes more and more impossible.
Well, this is really, well, that could be true back to what I was talking about before with.
I mean, it's only a base 4 set, right? Because there's only 4 possible genes, but still.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, you can have several dozen genes, but they might be additive or maybe a little bit of synergism.
Right.
So in other words, it's.
So there probably is a hard math behind it, but the thing is calculating that
well, it's actually
backwards.
Chemicals. It's the
Right. If you have X times Y plus Z minus A plus B,
something like that.
Something, but like to the length of all the genes, and equals answer. You're never going to solve for. The only way you can solve for one of those letters is if you narrow some of them down, right?
Well,
So-
in this case, what I'm saying is a particular
Of course, every gene.
observable phenotype.
Some genes are just dead; they don't do
call
anything.
They don't know about that. That's
Really?
They're finding a lot of what they thought was garbage. It just codes for something more subtle.
Okay.
It gets really complicated.
Nice.
And then you have I forget the jargon, but you have some genes I should know. But it'll probably come to me as soon as I walk out the door. But you have some genes that are basically like controllers.
Right.
That will control other genes and
Right.
turn them on and off.
Right.
Possibly.
Go-tos. We'll call them go-to statements. Because that's when they work.
Yeah, well,
They're essentially code go-tos.
almost more like.
Were there functions almost, maybe?
Almost more. If you were going totally off into the computer science analogy.
Well, I mean, at some point someone's going to have to, right?
It would be more like object-oriented stuff where you have triggers. where you might
You pass a value and it may or may not process it, or it may have more of effect or less effect depending what the value
or maybe
is.
more like component systems where
Oh my God.
you have certain entry points that will then trigger certain routines.
Yeah.
But if you don't trigger
Well, the
that
funny thing
entry
is,
point, that routine, or if you go to a different one, you get a different routine.
so at some point with that,
it's more like that.
So at some point with that stuff, you get to a point where you're like, all right, let's just look at the machine code and see what it actually does. Which is, of course, exactly what happens in biology.
Oh, you're making me think of sheets of paper going down the wall.
What is it doing?
I've coded and
Yeah, some point to figure out what the
long
object
time
is
ago.
actually doing, you got to go down to the bits to see what it tried to do, and then intuit what it meant back here.
in biology, that's going down to the actual
DNA and doing a spectrograph
the
and
particular molecule.
okay, it looked like this before, then something
uracils.
happened. Now it looks like this. What changed?
Yeah, the uracils and the actual DNA or RNA code.
Yeah. Oh, that's
And even then, well, certainly for a long time, it was very controversial whether all the genes were in the nucleus or was there extranuclear.
So
And then we got into then people started realizing that the mitochondria and all have their own genetic system that's totally independent and inherited independently.
right.
Because they're really more like a very, very old symbiont.
Right.
And that's actually how we process energy.
Right. Yeah, that's what works with all the proteins.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like that.
Well, the ribosomes create them, but it's actually what is breaking down oh boy, I'm getting into the chemistry here. The way I'm supposed to,
So far, okay. Well, this is why I keep interrupting you. If I hope people aren't annoyed that I'm interrupting Jim, but the reason I do
I'm
is because
interrupting myself there.
I try to bring like a real world thing, even if it's not always 100% correct, if it's pretty close, to try to bring people who aren't chemists or biologists into it and say, okay, this is.
I don't know if that's
here's an anchor.
Any more or less real world, but it's more common language.
Right, yeah. Well, I mean, it's just
cultural.
So sometimes, it's funny. I've actually had a debate with people on here before.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I need to get you on for like 20 more hours. Will you come on for like 20 more hours? Because
I warned you. I am known for keeping.
No, this is exactly what I wanted, and this is spectacular. I'm really enjoying it. And the greatest thing about doing the show is that I get to have interactions with brilliant people that I didn't earn. And hopefully I'm earning it.
I don't think I earned that.
Hopefully I'm earning it as I go, but because a lot of people don't get to have this kind of a conversation and ask questions at this level, and I feel very lucky that I've met with all the. That's what I loved about Linux too, is that it wasn't about credentials or it wasn't about momentum. It was about the now.
I seem to remember you talking about drinking from a fire hose.
Right.
When you were learning Linux.
Yeah. It was really hectic.
A lot there.
Yeah, and eventually I got to the point where when I left my last job, they were calling me the guru, and but
So you were shooting the fire hose at someone else.
I was shooting the fire hose at someone else. Yeah, and I tried to be gentle, try to get it in the cup at least some of the time.
Not bowl them over and run them out the door.
Watch this, it's gonna be funny. Yeah, not everyone is like that, and that's one of the reasons I hate that business, is because some people revel in talking down to people, and I think that's one of the biggest problems with all technical fields right now in general. Is there's
it's a skill.
It's like the kind of that peacocking, that virtue signaling, that I'm great, and they attack you with it. It's like a weapon, and it's like, what is wrong with you? None of us are going to progress if we all act like that. I try to act in a way where if everybody acted that way, we would all benefit.
Yeah, it's. You're making me think of when I was taking class groups around, and there was one point where I was told, okay, we have to come up with a script and stay to that script. That's ridiculous. I can't use the same script for, fourth graders that I use for graduate students. That just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So it was a case of, okay, I have this group, and what's their level, and trying to ask some questions and trying to understand where they're coming from, because even the different sixth grade groups are going to be different. Some of them might be really sharp, and some of them maybe not so much, or maybe you have to kind of find their level, and then maybe what I used to do is talk a little bit beyond it.
Right.
Just make them stretch a little bit.
Yeah. No, I feel you pushing the envelope, and that's good.
And then leave. And hopefully leave them a bit curious about what else there is to learn.
Right.
I didn't like it when people, especially the kids, now I know everything about salt marshes.
So I'm very interested in creating healthy societies, and the key to healthy societies is fresh blood.
Yeah.
So.
Oh yeah.
So what I'm loving about our interaction is that you're pushing the envelope up a little bit, and I'm pushing the envelope down a little bit. Right? No,
I'm kind of used to this.
Not just in a self-deprecating way, which I'm doing that too, but but also in a way that I'm trying to kind of drudge up more people into the conversation. And I think that's
understood.
And this is something that I think science isn't doing. I'm very bummed out about that.
It's true.
I'm very bummed out about that, and I think it's a huge problem, because honestly, the technology is advancing so quickly and it's becoming so complicated that you literally can't participate in the democracy unless you understand it. And we're really in danger.
At least
we're in a lot of danger because of the technocracy.
This is a conversation within the sciences.
Yeah. Oh, it is.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. Because I don't always see it. I don't always see it. Sometimes
I know.
I definitely didn't see it in IT. Forget it. They're too busy. They don't give them.
But
and computer science is critical right now because open source is, in a way, open source is the model meritocracy because it's almost perfectly smooth. Because you just need to know how, and your code will win. You know, if your code is just better, and you don't murder your wife, you know, you're going to get ahead.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. He's one of my references, you know.
Yes.
So he's the edge case, right?
I was formatting things that way.
He was an internet troll, by the way. So if you're that much of an internet troll where you might murder your wife, you're not helping. But other than that, if your code is good, you're going to win.
Yeah.
You know.
So what I'm thinking of, and this is there's actually a course in Stony Brook on how to communicate science.
Good.
And
that's interesting.
I didn't get to take it, but I have tried to pick up I have done some things that were kind of parallel to it. So it's actually taught by what I'm trying to pronounce his name right. He was in MASH and Alan Aldra. I'm not getting his name quite right, but do you know who I'm talking about? Alan.
You're talking about a character on the show MASH? Is that what you're talking about?
He was the actor, not the character.
Oh, okay. Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yes, I do know.
Alan Aldra.
Yes.
Alan Alda, Ealanalda.
Yes, he's pretty involved with the sciences right now.
You know, he teaches a course on how to teach science, and he's also had some programs in it. You can actually go to Stony Brook and take a course with him as the professor.
Holy shit! Really?
I know people who took his course.
Oh my God! I got to do this.
I've seen him go in and out of the.
I'm going to go for one class. Oh my God! Because I'm pretty sure he's the guy who I saw in the Nova special, Ape Genius, which was one of the inspirations for CivGene, which is my theory. And he's extremely, clear-cut, enunciated, comes across as friendly, but at the same time,
he doesn't really
articulating complex subjects.
He doesn't really pretend to know the science so much, though he's been learning it. But he's trying to teach to scientists his acting skills and his presentation skills.
It's funny because I'm like, where the f is he going with this? That is super important. That is really awesome. Nice.
So
yeah, I look up to him.
One person I know, she teaches in Suffolk Community College, and who took his course,
right,
and uses that to be a better professor there.
Right. Cool, excellent.
So, when I say this, I didn't teach his course, but I did have a little bit of.
There's a lot more going on in Stony Brook than I realized there was.
Oh yeah, and the one thing I said was a little bit parallel. Was back when I was like a freshman and a sophomore, when I was starting college, I was thinking about this, so I went into the drama club.
Yeah.
To learn to a great degree how to speak to people and how to project better and how to act in front of an audience better, with the idea that this would help me when I'm trying to teach people.
Great.
So I think he goes into improv and such, which I wasn't really doing, but
right.
That's to a great degree when you're in front of an audience or trying to understand what level they're at so that you can actually communicate with them. And certainly talking to elementary school children is very different from talking to grad students.
Right.
But to be able to reach them does it to a great degree it is improv.
Right. Yeah, no, well, some of the concepts are esoteric, and some of the concepts are just new, and you just express. And it's important you express it because you want them to the idea that
it's something I have to keep learning.
Species is a bucket and not a name tag, is a huge difference,
or maybe a blurry bucket, interconnected buckets.
A big, maybe we're like a bag, so it changes shape as what's in it changes.
That's a better. I often thought of it as bubbles, but breaking bubbles and they reshape and fill the space.
Right.
But
at the end of the tree is filled with bags.
Well, see, and even the idea of it being a tree is under attack.
Right. Of course. How could it not be if the species itself is blurry?
The people now.
Well,
I don't know
look
if
at
you
what they're
heard of
talking about
this
with Neanderthal
discovery.
genes showing up in humankind and like
yes.
interacting with them sexually.
Oh yeah.
And,
Well, and this is where I'm going with this.
some people are like, I would never hit that Neanderthal, and someone else is like, hey, that looks pretty good, and then humankind is kind of mixed up, right? I mean, of course, to talk about it actually happening, but
in biology, there's species, and this gets back to talking about Galapagos and Darwin's finches and what have you.
right,
But to a great degree, when you're starting out with what could consider one's biological species, and they're starting to get into different habitats, and where maybe the same adaptation is counterproductive. It works here, but not here, and they're starting to split up. But maybe they'll rejoin again, and you get into what's called a hybrid swarm.
right, okay,
And that, with the Neanderthals and maybe the Denisovians or Denisovans.
hybrid swarm. Ooh, this is fucking spectacular.
Yeah, no, that's a term.
So,
And so what you can, and this is probably what was happening with humans many years ago, when it wasn't just in Africa. It was even there's hints in the genome in Africa that there were other archaic human species or human forms that we don't even know about yet, because we haven't found the fossils yet, that might be showing up in the genome.
okay.
So, there's much more genetic diversity in Africa than there is once you get outside.
So it's very hard. One of the things that occurs to me when you're talking about how blurry the bag is, the blurry bag of species.
Where the bags blur into each other.
Right. So it's almost, of course at that point it becomes set theory, and things are sets are starting to go over each other and stuff. Right. But it becomes almost impossible to talk about.
That's why I said some of the people that really get down in the weeds with this, some of the taxonomists, want to just throw up their hands and say, well, we'll just stop using the term species.
We'll call it the blob. We'll call the entire animal kingdom the blob, and just
something like that. They're numbering it. So, but that really puts it goes back, going back to what we were saying before. That really puts a barrier between them and the general public, who want to categorize it and see.
Well, even between scientists, in different disciplines, if they're not they're not into the taxonomy at that level, they're like, I can't even talk to you. Because you're seeing things that you don't have words for, so you have no way to express them to me.
Right.
Yeah.
So at some point.
That's the complexity horizon that I was talking about before.
At some point with the,
and we need shows like this. We need stuff like this. That what you're talking about, that outreach. It doesn't have to be the show, but we need outreach.
Veering off in another direction. This, as a computer scientist, you've probably heard of Kurt Gödel.
Kurt Gödel. No, actually, I haven't. I'm sorry, I failed.
He was in there with Alan Turing and such, and that's
right. Yeah, I'm familiar with Turing, obviously.
And he was considered the most, the premier logician. I'm not pronouncing that right, but specialist in logic of the 20th century. He was a close friend of Einstein and such, and he didn't publish too many papers, but a lot of the ones he published were really blockbusters.
Well, that's what you want to do, right? You just want to publish one paper and everybody needs it.
And everyone then remembers, there was early on in the 20th century, and why can't I think of his name? One of the chief mathematicians put together a list of mathematical problems that, if solved, would make mathematics complete and really great foundation and all. And Kurt Gödel basically blew that to pieces. Shows that mathematics cannot be complete. There will be things that might be true in mathematics that we can't prove are true.
did I know about this guy?
Yeah, basically.
Because I've made the argument before with the SIVGene stuff that logic is not a panacea. It is impossible to have a complete logic set. It's impossible. And actually,
and he proved that.
And he proved that.
And then the other things, people later.
This is so embarrassing. I'm getting schooled, man. We're gonna hang out more often. Even though it's not, you're not getting any benefit. But I'm gonna stalk you.
People later on realized that Alan Turing's halting problem, which you must have heard about,
yes,
was an equivalent statement.
Now,
later on, the people realized that was a simpler version of it.
Do you have anything to say about the Turing test? I'm curious. Because a lot of people said that it's not a valid test. No, not directly. Okay. Well, now I have to read everything he wrote.
I at one point shared an office with someone who claimed that she failed the Turing test because people thought she was the computer. The computer was a.
I've met people like that.
She's a real brilliant person.
That's just called the autistic spectrum.
She was very, very precise.
Yeah. Or OCD. One of the two. Yeah.
Or very, very, very sharp.
Right, or just completely bored with wrong answers.
Yes,
right. That could also be. There are at least three possible answers to this. Yes.
But where I was going with that is, as far as communicating and the problems with trying to communicate even simple things, let alone complexities of science, is one of my favorite quotes from Kurt Gödel was that language is so imprecise, it's amazing we can communicate at all.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think that part of that is. So I think that actually has to do with our subconscious, and actually what's happening is.
Or actually, even the way. Okay, we think we know.
All of our information is contextual, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Context shifts, and so we're using these sloppy words and just slapping them over things, and actually our subconscious is sorting it out and making it make sense
and
in a way that we don't appreciate.
You really see this in idiom.
Yes. I love idiom.
Yes.
Because if nothing else, it results in endless humor.
Yes. When you stop to think about some of these phrases, they make no sense at all. But
my favorite was when
Steve. Out there, people know what you mean.
Steve read out, "There's more than one way to skin a cat," and where that came from. That was pretty hysterical. Yeah, it's grotesque. It's exactly what it sounds like.
It makes me think of a comparative anatomy class.
Yeah. So, well, that's
with our barrel of preserved cats.
Yeah, I don't even like. All right, I'm not going to go. I don't know if you planned this, but we're not going into this because it's too. We've got 20 minutes left. Do we even have 20 minutes left? We have 12 minutes left. You and your evil plans. All right, so all right. Here's an easy one, a very specific one, which will probably send you off on a crazy tangent. But are there any local endangered species?
Oh yeah.
Like, what is the one that concerns you the most as far as ecological collapse?
Ecological collapse?
Yeah.
That's a
well. There's two ways to look at this, right? Compassion. Just caring because we care, and the other one is this going to screw humans over?
Yeah.
And ecological collapse, of course, is the very fast worst case scenario of screwing humans over.
I don't know if I really have one locally with that.
Is there one of utmost concern that's in the most danger? That's a different question, but.
Or which ones do we work with? Because we only work.
Well, it could be just the one. It could just be of the ones you work with. That's fine.
Kind of a controversial one. I used to work with it a bit more, but our wind turbine specialists, her group works with this more now.
I thought you were going to tell me wind turbine specialists were endangered. I'm like,
no.
We can just get them jobs, man.
One of the things they deal with is the piping plover.
Okay.
Of the famous bumper sticker, tastes like chicken type thing.
Okay.
But
no, I don't.
A lot of people hate them.
Really?
But I think that's died down a little bit. I mean, certainly we try to communicate, and we're trying. One of the things that we've been trying to do is really diffuse the antagonism, and how can we manage the plover to increase in numbers without interfering
I remember.
with people.
I remember. This is because you have to segment pieces of the beach off to protect them.
I think some of the people who do it get get into this communication thing we were talking about.
Right.
They'll get too antagonistic with people, which is really self-defeating.
Of course,
Where we have spent a lot of time trying to understand what the plover really need in the ecosystem that supports them, and how do we separate that, what the plover need from what the people want, and so that different parts of the beach for different purposes.
Right.
So we've spent a lot of time working on that. And she might be giving a presentation on that right now because she's off on a conference. I don't know if she's giving that particular one, but we put posters together. And
Right.
trying to put
We've actually discussed this bird before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the one, and part of the reason that kind of fits with your mode is because that's a bird that, and this is one of the reasons that was given more attention by Fish and Wildlife, is that's a bird that comes in very early in the season. And if you protect that species and set aside part of the beach for that, and we're trying to set aside the parts that the people don't really need, and make it conducive so that they'll breed well and that the chicks will do well, again, by understanding the underlying ecosystem, instead of just thinking of it as sand.
Right.
But that also provides a space for a lot of other species. So then that will be a protected space where we'll get the tern colonies and the black skimmer colonies and other species. So it becomes, in some ways, a keystone for protecting the others.
Right, I got it.
So
because it's a worst case almost, if you protect them, you inadvertently protect other species as well.
To a great, I wouldn't say worst case, but yeah.
A difficult
case. They come in early.
Right.
So if you...
edge case, that's the word that I'm looking for. Edge case, because it's the edge being time at the beginning of the season.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So they come in early, so you can't wait for the other ones. And they come in different stages. So like I mentioned the black skimmer, they're like the last one in the season. The plover are gone already by the time they start to nest.
Right.
They seem to wait until the fish in the bay have developed to be larger, and some of the
higher caloric needs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And they kind of hunt blind. They feel they'll hunt at night a lot.
So I'm kind of curious. So this is something I actually wanted to bring something. Just a cool bird that I love. Of course, it's trendy and sexy and easy and very visible. So there's been a huge resurgence of hawks and falcons in the area. So what a lot of people may not realize in the New York area, there's the peregrine falcon, and it's the fastest bird in the world. It could dive faster than any other bird. I think it's 220 miles an hour.
People would contend the fastest organism in the world.
Really? Excellent. Even better. The fastest organism in the world. You need a machine to go faster.
What's faster than them, yeah.
Yeah, what's faster than diving 220 miles an hour?
Yeah.
So, and
which
I've
people
actually...
didn't believe until they started actually doing the speed, like the police speed guns on them.
Right, or a strobe camera or something.
Well, no, the radar, the Doppler radar.
Is that how they first got it? Okay.
Well, that's not how people were estimating it.
Right.
But to actually confirm it, you actually needed the data.
I've actually seen one hunt. Ironically, I've
seen more than once.
Right. I saw one just, and And I was on the train. It was spectacular.
Yeah, they are spectacular birds.
And
Absolutely.
you can't believe it till you see it, And so I'm curious now. So since they're coming back, right? They used to be none of them when I was a kid,
Pretty much.
and now they're everywhere.
First one I saw was when I was taking an ornithology class, and we were down Maryland, I think. Or, I think it was New Jersey. It might have been in New Jersey, one of the marshes there. And one of the professors got really excited, brought out a celestron, like a big mirror telescope that some people might use for stargazing and such. It was the only time on the trip he brought it out, set it up, and okay guys, look at this. This is a peregrine falcon. It might be the last one you see in your life.
Oh, that's brutal. That's got to have an impact on you.
Yeah, obviously I remember it.
Yeah.
Here's this little faint, blurry, vibrating image of this bird standing on top of a pole about a mile away.
Wow.
And they happen to,
And now they're everywhere.
well, but it took a lot of effort. And
Oh, yeah.
This was at their nadir. This was when there was very few of them around.
Was
And a lot of
this
them,
early 70s or?
late 60s,
They say, yeah.
a little before that.
Yeah, a lot of the endangered species that didn't die off hit their worst points in their late 60s, early 70s.
In this case, that was when the DDT problem was still.
Oh yeah, that's crazy.
And that's what the problem was. The DDT.
Asbestos is safe for everyone. Yes.
It was used. It was considered non-toxic. During World War II, it was a huge advantage for the Allies. They were dusting all the soldiers with it, get rid of lice and what have you. People were demonstrating the safety by drinking it.
Oh my God.
No.
I'm reminded of those clips where Monsanto executives will not drink Roundup.
But back with the DDT,
Yeah.
the people were actually doing that.
Yeah, of course.
And so it had a low acute toxicity for mammals and such, but it had this hidden property with birds that it upsets their calcium metabolism. You need the calcium metabolism to create eggshells or for the chicks to form straight bones and such.
Right.
So
And when there's so little bone, it matters more.
Yes.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Very. So you certainly had distorted bone, like in some of the tern colonies on the Great Lakes and all. You had distorted bones. You had beaks that didn't match, that were twisted, that couldn't.
Right.
Obviously, weren't going to be able to eat once Mama and Papa weren't feeding you anymore.
Right.
So you had some tern colonies there that were sinks. Terns would come in and see lots of population sinks in that there were new ones coming in from other places, but you weren't getting any reproduction there.
Right.
So it was bringing in birds, but you weren't producing any. So, and around here on Long Island, the osprey were, you had a few osprey out east, and they had a very hard time getting any chicks off at the time, and it was the same problem with the peregrines and such. So, once we kind of got past that, then it was a very interesting twist with the peregrines in particular. You had a lot of raccoons and such around their natural areas, would be their natural nesting sites. Throwing jargon out there, sorry. Up on the Palisades area along the Hudson and such, where they used to naturally nest. You had raccoons and such raiding their nests along with problems with the eggs and such. So where did they end up doing the best? Well, let's see. What's an artificial cliff? Oh yeah, the buildings in New York City.
Yes.
And you have lots of pigeons.
Right alongside of the pigeons.
And the pigeons weren't contaminated with DDT.
Right. Because there was no wildlife to spray with it. Yeah.
Well, it wasn't a farmland that was being protected.
Right.
You just had People
Right.
feeding the pigeons and all, feeding the peregrines with pigeons.
Right.
And the bridges,
Well, that's
a lot of the bridges like Verrazano and the Gil Hodges Bridge, there was been peregrine nests there for a long time. Nassau County, the top of the Nassau County Hospital.
Right.
There's a peregrine colony. There's been a peregrine nest up there for years.
Yep.
So.
So it's interesting that they moved from the urban environment out to the rural.
No, the other way around.
No, I'm saying they reseeded the urban, the city.
I don't know if they particularly moved to the rural yet.
Well, they're definitely in Queens. They're all over the place in Queens.
Well,
so.
that's urban.
Yeah, it's urban. Fair enough.
We've had some taking over osprey nests out in the marsh.
Yep.
So we have them out in the bay.
Right.
Taking over the poles that were put up for osprey.
So actually, the point that I wanted to bring up about peregrine falcons is, so now that I think you already answered my question. The thing I was going to bring up is, since they're bird predators, among other things, that actually affecting the other endangered birds. Now that they're becoming more popular, they're actually killing them. I mean, of course, that's part of the natural cycle, but at the same time, you don't want it.
Not so much here as they've had more extreme incidents in California, where you would have a less common, a more endangered hawk attacking a more endangered species than we have around
So
here.
it does happen. It just doesn't happen with this particular species.
And we've had actually some of the
where things are coming back unevenly, and now one animal's endangering another that you're trying to bring back.
There are some interesting interactions sometime. Actually, this was a disturbance in the skimmer colony a couple of years ago that we managed. And a peregrine, and I think definitely a peregrine and possibly sharpshin, but a peregrine was attacking the terns and scaring the skimmers, and the skimmers were bleeding out of the protected area
to get away from it,
and were in the middle of where the people were, and the photographers were going right at, not the local photographers, but we have people come from all over the world,
right?
And China and a lot of other places, and they were trying to get close-ups of these birds that were now in an area that was not protected,
right?
And we lost a lot of chicks that year.
Wow!
That knocked the predation of them.
Well, I mean,
so it was an indirect effect of the peregrines going after the terns.
Interesting.
And a couple of the local photographers had ended up getting
this was definitely
pictures.
This was not coach, folks. This was the right question.
Yeah.
Good. That's really interesting.
Yeah,
Jim, thank you. Thank you so much for coming on. We're out of time, but I want to have you back on. Will you come back on the show?
At least give me a little break. But yeah,
yeah, of course I'll give you a break.
I guess that can be.
So we usually I'm currently aiming for a season to be a year. So it would be another interview would be in a year or sometime yearish. But would you come back on for a panel? Because sometimes we have panels with groups of people and we talk about a little bit harder topics. But you can just chime in or.
Yeah, hopefully.
You have been amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, and I'm glad it worked out.
Yeah, great. Me too. Dr. Jim Brown, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. See you next week.
Take care.